The moment Commander Ava Reed's eyes locked onto the tattoo beneath Mark Dalton's rolled sleeve, 12 black belts witnessed something they'd never seen before. A Navy SEAL commander freeze mid-stride, her hand trembling as it rose in a salute meant for ghosts. The arrow crossed by a wave wasn't just ink on skin. It was a symbol from Operation Silent Wave, a mission that had supposedly claimed every soul involved. Yet here stood Mark Dalton, a single dad in a faded field jacket, alive and breathing in a small-town dojo while his 8-year-old daughter sketched butterflies in the corner. Welcome to a story that will change everything you thought you knew about strength, survival, and second chances. Stay with me until the end and drop a comment about which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. The morning air at Fort Ashwood carried the scent of pine resin and distant rain, a combination that Mark Dalton had learned to appreciate during his 3 years in this quiet Colorado town. He held Lily's small hand as they walked toward the community center, her rainbow backpack bouncing against her tiny frame with each enthusiastic step. She was chattering about her art class, about how Mrs. Chen had promised they'd work with watercolors today, about the butterflies she'd seen yesterday that had wings like stained glass. "Dad, do you think butterflies know they're beautiful?" Lily asked, her green eyes, so much like her mother's, looking up at him with that peculiar intensity that 8-year-olds reserved for life's most important questions. Mark squeezed her hand gently. "I think they're too busy being butterflies to worry about it, sweetheart." She seemed satisfied with this answer, skipping a little as they approached the building. The Fort Ashwood Community Center was a sprawling complex that housed everything from pottery classes to the local food bank. But most importantly for Mark, it contained the children's art studio where Lily spent her Saturday mornings while he used the adjacent gym. It had become their routine these Saturdays, a routine that Mark had carefully constructed, brick by brick, in the years since Sarah's death. Structure was important. Predictability was safety. In a world that had taken so much from both of them, these small rituals were anchors. The main lobby was already bustling with weekend activity. Mrs. Patterson from the library waved at them, her arms full of children's books for story time. Tom Bradley, who ran the Veterans Support Group Mark occasionally attended, nodded from across the room. This was the life Mark had chosen, visible enough not to raise suspicion, invisible enough not to draw attention. "All right, little artist," Mark said, kneeling to Lily's level. "You remember the rules? Stay with Mrs. Chen, don't leave the art room, and if I need anything, ask Mr. Tom at the front desk to find you," Lily recited, then added with a mischievous grin, "And don't eat all the cookies before snack time." "That's my girl." He kissed her forehead, watching as she scampered off toward the art studio, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Mark straightened, rolling his shoulders beneath his faded field jacket, a remnant from another life that he couldn't quite bring himself to discard. The jacket had been Sarah's favorite. She used to steal it on cold mornings, wrapping herself in it while she made coffee, claiming it smelled like safety. Now it just smelled like laundry detergent and the faint essence of Lily's strawberry shampoo from when she'd hug him. The gym was down the east corridor, past the dance studios and the meditation room. Mark had discovered it his first week in Fort Ashwood, drawn by the familiar sound of weights clanking and bodies moving with purpose. It wasn't fancy, just a collection of well-used equipment and a large open space with mats that served multiple purposes. Sometimes it hosted yoga classes, sometimes self-defense workshops. Today, as Mark pushed open the door, he found it occupied by something else entirely. The dojo setup was new. Professional-grade mats had been laid out in a perfect square, bordered by standing mirrors that reflected the morning light streaming through the high windows. But it wasn't the setup that made Mark pause in the doorway. It was the people. 12 of them, all in pristine white GIs with black belts tied precisely around their waists. They moved with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of years of training, their warm-up exercises flowing from one form to the next like a choreographed dance. But there was something else in their movements, something Mark recognized immediately: arrogance. It was in the way they occupied the space, as if it belonged to them by divine right. In the way their voices carried, loud and performative, each joke and comment pitched to ensure everyone heard how clever, how strong, how superior they were. Mark had seen this before, in countless gyms and training grounds. Young fighters drunk on their own skill, looking for someone to remind the world and themselves just how formidable they were. "Excuse me, sir, this space is reserved." The voice belonged to the tallest of the group, a man in his early 30s with shoulders like a linebacker and hands scarred from years of impact. His GI was decorated with patches, tournament wins, Mark assumed, and he wore them like military decorations. "Just passing through to the weight room," Mark said quietly, starting to move along the edge of the mat. "Weight room's closed for maintenance," another one called out, this one younger, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of eager aggression that reminded Mark of young soldiers fresh out of basic training. "Big leak in the ceiling. They've got signs posted everywhere." Mark hadn't seen any signs, but he didn't argue. He'd learned long ago that sometimes the path of least resistance was the wisest choice. "I'll come back later then." "You could stay and watch," the tall one said, and there was something in his tone that made Mark pause. It wasn't quite an invitation. It was bait, dangled with the expectation that Mark would either scurry away or rise to it. "We're the Mountain Brotherhood, regional champions 3 years running. Might learn something." The others chuckled, a sound that rippled through the group like dominoes falling. Mark recognized the dynamic immediately. Pack mentality, with the tall one as the alpha, each member playing their role in the hierarchy. The younger one who'd spoken was clearly the beta, eager to impress. The others ranged from genuinely skilled fighters to those who'd earned their black belts through persistence rather than prowess. "I'm sure you're very talented," Mark said, his voice carrying neither sarcasm nor enthusiasm. It was the vocal equivalent of beige paint, utterly neutral, giving nothing for them to grab onto. But neutrality, Mark had learned, could sometimes be the greatest provocation of all. "Very talented," one of them mimicked, pitching his voice high. "You hear that, Jake?" "We're very talented." Jake, the tall one, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know, we're always looking for sparring partners. Help keep us sharp. You look like you might have some experience." His gaze traveled over Mark's frame, taking in the field jacket, the slight favor of his left leg from an old injury that most people never noticed, the calluses on his hands that spoke of more than casual gym use. "I'm just a dad waiting for his daughter," Mark replied, glancing at his watch. Lily had been in class for exactly 4 minutes. "A dad," Jake repeated, and something in the way he said it made the hair on Mark's neck stand up. Not a threat exactly, but a dismissal. A categorization. Just a dad. As if that was all Mark could ever be. "Well, dads need exercise too, right? Come on, just a friendly round. Unless." He let the word hang in the air like a challenge. This was the moment Mark had learned to navigate carefully, the moment where backing down would mark him as weak, potentially making him and Lily targets for future harassment, but engaging would open doors he'd spent 3 years keeping locked. "I appreciate the offer, but..." "He's scared," the young beta announced to the group, loud enough to echo off the mirrors. "Look at him, he's actually scared." The laughter that followed was meant to sting, meant to force a reaction. Mark felt it wash over him like water over stone, erosion that would take millennia to make an impact. He'd been called worse by better, been tested by people who made these weekend warriors look like children playing dress-up. But then one of them said something that changed everything. Probably for the best. Wouldn't want to traumatize his kid when daddy gets carried out on a stretcher. The words were spoken casually, thoughtlessly, the kind of trash talk that flowed freely in gyms everywhere. But Mark's hand tightened involuntarily, his body shifting subtly from passive to ready before he consciously pulled himself back. They didn't know what they were playing with. Couldn't know. "Tell you what," Mark said, his voice dropping half an octave, something Sarah used to call his operator voice, the one that meant the gloves were coming off. "1 round, 3 minutes. Then I need to get back to my daughter." The change in the room was electric. Jake's smile widened, genuine this time, the smile of a predator who'd successfully lured prey into the open. "Now we're talking. Someone get this man some gear." "I'm fine as is," Mark said, shrugging off his field jacket and folding it carefully, placing it on a bench against the wall. Underneath, he wore a simple gray t-shirt, soft with age and washing. It clung enough to hint at the muscle beneath, but not enough to advertise it. His jeans were practical, allowing for movement. His boots were steel-toed, worn but well-maintained. "You're going to fight in street clothes?" the beta asked incredulously. It's just 3 minutes of friendly sparring, Mark replied, moving toward the mat. Right. The Mountain Brotherhood formed a circle, their excitement palpable. This was what they'd come for, what they always came for, the chance to demonstrate their superiority, to reinforce their place in the hierarchy they'd constructed. Jake stepped into the center, rolling his shoulders, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Standard rules, he announced. No eye gouging, no groin shots, no small joint manipulation. Everything else is fair game. Tap out or verbal submission ends it. Everyone clear? Mark nodded, stepping onto the mat. The texture was familiar beneath his boots, a sensation that triggered muscle memory he'd spent years trying to suppress. His body wanted to move, to flow, to become what it had been trained to be. He held it in check, forcing himself to adopt a basic stance that suggested competence but not expertise. Actually, Jake said, his tone conversational, why don't we make this interesting? You last the full 3 minutes, and we'll donate $500 to your daughter's art class or whatever. You tap out, and you donate $50 to our dojo fund. Fair? It was a trap within a trap. If Mark refused, he'd look like he was backing down. If he accepted and lost, it would cost him money he could afford, but would prefer to keep. If he won, deal, Mark said simply. Someone had produced a timer. The beta held it up, his finger poised over the start button. Ready? 3, 2, 1. The instant the timer started, Jake moved. He was good. Mark could give him that. His approach was textbook, a combination of Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that had become the standard for modern mixed martial arts. He came in with a testing jab, followed by a low kick aimed at Mark's lead leg, the one Jake had correctly identified as previously injured. Mark shifted his weight, letting the kick glance off his shin rather than taking it full on his thigh. The impact still hurt. Jake had power behind his strikes, but Mark had learned to eat pain for breakfast in places where showing weakness meant death. Jake pressed forward, throwing a combination that would have overwhelmed most amateur fighters. Left jab, right cross, left hook, right knee. It was fast, brutal, and technically perfect. Mark weaved through it like smoke, each movement minimal, efficient, giving ground when necessary, but never more than required. Stop running, one of the Brotherhood shouted. But Mark wasn't running. He was reading. Every fighter had patterns, tells, habits they fell back on under pressure. Jake telegraphed his right hand by dropping his shoulder a fraction of an inch. He planted his left foot a specific way before throwing his kicks. He breathed in through his nose before committing to a serious attack. 30 seconds passed. Jake was getting frustrated. His attacks became more aggressive, less controlled. He was used to opponents who either folded quickly or engaged in the kind of back-and-forth brawling that made for exciting matches. Mark was giving him neither. Fight back, coward, the beta yelled. Jake came in with a Superman punch, a jumping strike that covered distance quickly and could be devastating if it landed. It was also a commitment, leaving the attacker vulnerable if it missed. Mark didn't let it miss. Instead, he stepped into it, inside its arc, his forearm coming up to deflect rather than block. Jake's momentum carried him forward, and Mark helped him along with a gentle redirection that sent the bigger man stumbling past. To observers, it looked like Jake had simply misjudged the distance. Only someone with extensive training would recognize the subtle manipulation of momentum and balance. Lucky, Jake spat, turning back with renewed aggression. But luck had nothing to do with it. Everything Mark did was calculated, measured, designed to frustrate without humiliating, to defend without escalating. It was a dance he'd perfected in places where the wrong move meant international incidents. 1 minute passed. Jake was breathing harder now, sweat beading on his forehead. The crowd had grown quieter, sensing something they couldn't quite identify. This wasn't going according to script. Jake changed tactics, shooting for a takedown. It was well executed, the kind of double leg that had probably won him dozens of matches. Mark sprawled, his hips dropping back, his weight pressing down on Jake's shoulders. It was wrestling 101, but the ease with which Mark did it, the perfect timing and pressure, spoke of countless hours of practice. They separated, Jake backing up to reassess. There was something different in his eyes now, not quite fear, but a recognition that he might have misjudged his opponent. You've trained, he said, not a question, but a statement. Mark didn't respond, simply maintaining his ready stance. His breathing was controlled, barely elevated despite the exertion. This was nothing compared to the 20-mile runs in full gear, the hours of rolling in the kill houses, the days without sleep operating behind enemy lines. Jake came again, this time with more respect, more caution. He threw combinations meant to test rather than finish, looking for openings. Mark gave him nothing, moving like water, always where Jake wasn't expecting him to be. 2 minutes passed. The crowd was silent now, watching something they didn't understand. This should have been a beating, a lesson taught to an overconfident civilian. Instead, it was becoming something else, a masterclass in defensive fighting that none of them had the experience to fully appreciate. 30 seconds, the beta called out, his voice uncertain. Jake's frustration boiled over. He rushed forward with a haymaker, a wild swing born of desperation and wounded pride. It was the kind of mistake he'd never make in a tournament, the kind of opening he'd punish mercilessly if an opponent gave it to him. Mark could have ended it there, could have slipped the punch and delivered a counter that would have put Jake on the mat, unconscious before he hit the ground. The angle was perfect, the opportunity clear. His body knew exactly what to do, muscle memory screaming at him to finish it. Instead, Mark stepped back, letting the punch whiff past, letting Jake stumble with his own momentum. The bigger man caught himself, turning back with something like desperation in his eyes. He knew he was losing, not to superior skill necessarily, but to something else, something he couldn't define or counter. 10 seconds. Jake threw everything he had into those last moments, a flurry of strikes that would have looked impressive to anyone watching. But Mark moved through them like a ghost, present but untouchable, solid but impossible to grasp. It wasn't flashy, wasn't the kind of movement that would make a highlight reel. It was something far more disturbing to those with eyes to see. It was effortless. The timer buzzed. Mark stepped back immediately, his hands dropping to his sides. He wasn't breathing hard, wasn't sweating. He looked exactly as he had 3 minutes ago, except for a slight flush to his cheeks that could have been from exertion or could have been from the warmth of the room. Jake stood in the center of the mat, chest heaving, gi soaked with sweat, his face a mixture of confusion, frustration, and something that might have been the beginning of respect. "You never attacked," he said, the words coming out between gasps. "You said 3 minutes," Mark replied simply. "I lasted 3 minutes. But you never—" Jake stopped, processing what had just happened. In 3 minutes of constant aggression, he hadn't landed a single clean strike. More disturbing, Mark hadn't needed to attack to achieve that. "Who are you?" Before Mark could answer, the door to the gym burst open with enough force to make everyone turn. A woman stood in the doorway, her presence immediately commanding attention despite her small stature. She wore dress blues, the uniform of a naval officer, pristine and sharp. Her hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, her shoes polished to a mirror shine. But it was her eyes that held the room, dark, intense, scanning the space with the kind of situational awareness that came from years in hostile territories. They swept over the Brotherhood, dismissed them as non-threats, and locked onto Mark with laser focus. Commander Ava Reed had arrived. Mark's blood cooled. He knew her, of course. They'd served together, bled together, had each other's backs in places where trust meant survival. But she was supposed to be dead. Just like he was supposed to be dead. Just like everyone from Operation Silent Wave was supposed to be dead. "Stand down," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the spine. The Brotherhood found themselves stepping back before they realized they'd moved. Her gaze never left Mark as she crossed the gym, her steps measured, controlled. When she was 6 feet away, she stopped, her entire body rigid with military bearing. "I need to see your left forearm," she said quietly, but in the silence of the gym, everyone heard her. Mark hesitated. This was the moment he'd spent 3 years avoiding, the past catching up despite every precaution he'd taken. But there was no point in denial, not with Ava. She'd already seen something, recognized something in the way he moved, perhaps, or maybe it was just the inexplicable instinct that had kept them both alive when physics and probability said they should be dead. Slowly, he pushed up the sleeve of his t-shirt. The tattoo was simple compared to the elaborate artwork many veterans carried. Just an arrow crossed by a stylized wave, rendered in black ink that had faded slightly over the years. To most people, it would mean nothing, just another military tattoo among millions. To Ava, it meant everything. Her hand came up in a salute so sharp it could have cut glass. Not the casual greeting of fellow service members, but the kind of salute reserved for moments of profound respect, for honor guards and fallen heroes, for those who had earned recognition beyond words. "Master Chief Dalton," she said, her voice thick with emotion she was fighting to control. "We thought you were KIA." The gym erupted in whispers. "Master Chief, KIA, killed in action." The pieces were falling into place for the Brotherhood, painting a picture they hadn't expected. The quiet dad who'd just made their champion look like an amateur wasn't just trained, he was elite, the kind of elite that countries sent when failure wasn't an option. "Commander," Mark replied, returning the salute with reluctant precision. "It's just Mark now." "I'm just Mark." "Like hell you are," Ava said, dropping her salute but maintaining her military bearing. "Do you have any idea what your survival means?" "What this changes?" "It doesn't change anything," Mark said firmly. "I'm out. Have been for 3 years. I have a daughter now. A life." "A daughter," Ava repeated, and something in her expression softened. She knew what had happened to Sarah, of course. The team had all known about Mark's wife, about her illness, about the impossible choice he'd faced between duty and love. "Lily," Mark nodded, glancing at his watch. "Who's in art class for another hour and expects her boring dad to be waiting when she's done?" "Boring," Jake said, speaking for the first time since the timer had gone off. "You call that boring? What the hell was that? What are you?" Mark turned to look at him, and for just a moment let the mask slip, let them see a glimpse of what lay beneath the suburban dad exterior. It was like looking into an abyss that looked back, a depth of experience and capability that made their weekend warrior games seem like children's toys. "I'm nobody," Mark said quietly. "Just a dad who made a deal about lasting 3 minutes. I believe you mentioned something about a donation?" Jake nodded numbly, his hand already reaching for his wallet. The others were still staring, trying to reconcile what they'd witnessed with their understanding of the world. They'd thought themselves apex predators in their small pond. Now they realized they'd been splashing in the shallows while something from the deep ocean had been watching. "Mark," Ava said, drawing his attention back, "we need to talk. Privately." "No," Mark said simply, "we don't. That life is over. I died in Silent Wave, remember? The official record says so. Mark Dalton, the contractor who moved here 3 years ago with his daughter, has no connection to any of that." "The official record says everyone died in Silent Wave," Ava countered. "But here we both are." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Both of them, survivors of something that had no survivors. The Brotherhood was listening with the kind of intensity usually reserved for classified briefings, knowing they were hearing something they probably shouldn't, unable to stop themselves from wanting to know more. "How?" Mark asked, the single word carrying years of guilt, wondering, survivor's shame. "Same as you, probably," Ava replied. "Luck, skill, and a refusal to die when the universe insisted on it. But Mark, if we survived, others might have too. We need to—" "No," Mark cut her off. "Others didn't. I checked. I spent 6 months checking, Ava. Every hospital, every morgue, every possible safe house. We're it, and now I'm done. I have Lily to think about." "She's the reason we need to talk," Ava said urgently. "Things have changed. The people responsible for Silent Wave are ghosts chasing ghosts," Mark finished. "Let them chase. I'm not running, but I'm not engaging either. I'm just a dad in Colorado who takes his daughter to art class." Ava studied him for a long moment, seeing the resolution in his eyes, the kind of decision that had been carved in stone through pain and loss, and the conscious choice to be something other than what he'd been made to be. "All right," she said finally, "but I'm not going anywhere. I've been stationed at Fort Carson. I transferred here specifically to find you, or to find proof you were really gone. Now that I know you're alive." She trailed off, then straightened. "The offer stands. When you're ready to talk, really talk, you know where to find me." She turned to leave, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. For what it's worth, Sarah would be proud. Lily. She looks just like her mother in those pictures you used to carry. Mark's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Ava nodded, understanding the dismissal, and walked out with the same purposeful stride she'd entered with. The gym remained silent for a full minute after she left. The Brotherhood stood frozen, processing what they'd witnessed, trying to understand how their morning had shifted from routine training to something out of a spy novel. Finally, Jake cleared his throat. "So, you were Special Forces?" "I was a lot of things," Mark replied, retrieving his field jacket from the bench. "Now I'm a dad whose daughter is going to show me her butterfly painting in 45 minutes. Could you—" The beta started, then stopped, gathering courage. "Could you teach us? What you did, the way you moved, we thought we were good, but that was something else entirely." Mark paused in putting on his jacket. These weren't bad kids, really. Just young men who'd built their identity around being fighters, who'd never been tested against someone who'd learned combat as survival rather than sport. "What I know isn't for tournaments," Mark said carefully. "It's not for trophies or belts or impressing people at parties. What I know is for ending threats permanently. It's for surviving when civilization is a memory and the only law is violence. You don't want to know what I know." "But the defense," Jake said, stepping forward, "the way you controlled the entire fight without throwing a single offensive strike. That's not about killing, that's about something else." Mark studied him, seeing past the arrogance to something deeper. Jake was a fighter, yes, but he was also a teacher. The patches on his GI included instructor certifications. He taught kids' classes, probably, self-defense workshops for the community. There was potential there for something more than just ego gratification. "You teach here?" Mark asked. "Twice a week, kids on Wednesdays, adults on Fridays. Been trying to get more veterans involved, but—" Jake shrugged. "Not many trust a civilian instructor, even one with credentials." Mark made a decision he'd probably regret. "Friday, I'll come to your adult class, not to teach, just to observe. If I think there's something worth building on, maybe we can talk. But I have conditions." "Anything," Jake said immediately. "No questions about my past. No military hero worship. No spreading stories about what you saw today. As far as anyone knows, I'm just a dad who got lucky and knows a little about self-defense. And absolutely no one approaches my daughter. She doesn't need to know any of this." "Deal." Jake extended his hand, and the donation to the art class wasn't conditional on the fight. Win or lose, those kids deserve support. Mark shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the calluses that spoke of dedication rather than just violence. Maybe something good could come from this after all. "Master Chief," one of the others said quietly, that means you were—" "That rank means nothing anymore," Mark interrupted. "I left those stripes in a place that doesn't exist, carried by a man who doesn't exist. I'm just Mark now." But even as he said it, he could feel the past tugging at him. Ava's appearance had cracked the seal on a box he'd welded shut. Questions he'd forced himself to stop asking were bubbling up. If she had survived, who else might have? And more disturbing, why were there two survivors from a mission that had been designed to have none? "Dad!" The voice cut through his thoughts like a blade of sunshine. Lily stood in the doorway, her art smock splattered with paint, holding a canvas that was still wet. Her face was bright with excitement and pride. "Look! I finished early and Mrs. Chen said I could come show you." She ran across the gym, oblivious to the tension, to the way 12 black belts stepped aside for an 8-year-old girl like she was royalty. Mark knelt as she reached him, his entire demeanor changing. The dangerous thing the Brotherhood had glimpsed was gone, replaced by something infinitely softer but no less intense. This was a different kind of warrior, one who fought bedtime monsters and fixed scraped knees and would burn the world to keep this child safe. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, examining the painting. It was a butterfly, of course, but rendered in colors that shouldn't work together yet somehow did. Purple wings with orange spots, a green body with blue antennae, flying through a sky that was somehow both night and day. It was impossible and perfect, the kind of art only children could create before the world taught them what butterflies were supposed to look like. "It's you and me," Lily explained seriously. "The butterfly is both of us. See? It has your eyes and my smile." Mark looked closer, and damned if she wasn't right. In the abstract swirls of paint, she'd captured something essential. Two spirits merged into one impossible, beautiful thing. "It's perfect," he said, meaning it. "Should we hang it on the special wall when we get home?" The special wall was the hallway between their bedrooms, covered in Lily's art from the past 3 years. Sarah would have loved it, would have insisted on proper frames and gallery lighting. Mark had done his best to honor that impulse. "Yes!" Lily bounced, then noticed the crowd around them. "Why is everyone watching us?" "They're admiring your painting," Mark said smoothly. "It's not every day someone sees a butterfly with dragon powers." "It doesn't have dragon powers, Dad," Lily said with the exasperation of someone dealing with a particularly slow adult. "It has love powers. Totally different." "My mistake," Mark said solemnly, standing and taking her free hand. "Come on, artist. Let's get this masterpiece home before the paint smudges." As they walked toward the door, Jake called out, "Friday, then?" Mark paused, glanced down at Lily, who was carefully holding her painting level, then back at Jake. "Friday." They left the gym and walked back through the community center, Lily chattering about her class, about how Timothy had spilled blue paint everywhere and how Mrs. Chen had turned it into a lesson about happy accidents. Mark listened with half his attention, the other half processing what had just happened. Ava was alive. After 3 years of believing he was the sole survivor, of carrying that weight alone, she was alive. And if the universe could be wrong about that, what else might it be wrong about? "Dad, you're squeezing too hard," Lily said. Mark immediately loosened his grip on her hand. "Sorry, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am," he said truthfully. They reached their truck, a practical Ford that had seen better days but ran reliably. Mark helped Lily secure her painting in the back where it wouldn't slide around, then buckled her into her booster seat. It was these moments, these mundane, precious moments, that he'd chosen over everything else. Over duty, honor, country, all the things that had defined him for so long. As he climbed into the driver's seat, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but he recognized the message format immediately. Coordinates, a time, and a single word. "Please." Ava. She wasn't going to let this go. Mark deleted the message and started the truck. In the rear-view mirror, he could see Lily already dozing off, the excitement of the morning catching up with her. This was his life now. This was what mattered. But as he drove through the quiet streets of Fort Ashwood, past the neat houses and the small shops, the parks where children played without fear, he couldn't shake the feeling that the past wasn't done with him yet. The arrow and wave tattoo seemed to burn beneath his sleeve, a reminder of oaths taken and brothers lost, of a mission that had gone so wrong it had been erased from history. 3 years he'd been dead. 3 years of peace built on a foundation of lies and omissions. Now Ava had found him, and if she could, others could too. Others who might not be content to let sleeping ghosts lie. "Dad?" Lily's voice was sleepy from the back seat. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Are you a hero?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Why would you ask that? Timothy's dad said heroes are people who protect other people. And you always protect me. So are you a hero? Mark was quiet for a long moment, navigating the familiar streets while navigating the much more treacherous terrain of truth and innocence. "I'm just your dad," he finally said. "That's all I need to be." "Good," Lily mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. "Heroes have to go away to save everyone. Dads stay home." Mark's throat tightened. From the mouths of babes came wisdom that philosophers would envy. She was right, of course. Heroes left. Heroes sacrificed. Heroes died in places like Silent Wave. Their bodies never recovered, their stories never told. Dads stayed home and hung butterfly paintings on the wall. But as they pulled into their driveway, Mark saw a black sedan parked across the street. Government plates, tinted windows. The kind of vehicle that screamed federal authority to anyone who knew what to look for. Most people wouldn't notice it, would assume it was just another car in a neighborhood full of cars. Mark noticed. He got Lily inside, settling her on the couch for a proper nap, her painting prominently displayed on the coffee table where she could see it when she woke up. Then he walked back outside, crossing the street with the kind of casual purpose that would look innocent to anyone watching from behind curtains. The driver's window rolled down as he approached. It wasn't Ava. It was worse. Colonel James Hartley, retired. Except men like Hartley never really retired. They just shifted from official to unofficial, from acknowledged to deniable. His face had more lines than Mark remembered. His hair more gray than black now, but his eyes were the same, sharp, calculating, always seeing 3 moves ahead. "Hello, Ghost," Hartley said, using Mark's old call sign like it was his given name. "Nice place you've got here. Very suburban." "What do you want, Hartley?" "Same thing as Commander Reed, I imagine. To understand how a dead man is walking around Colorado teaching his daughter to paint butterflies." "Lucky guess on the butterflies." Hartley smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. "Nothing about this is luck, and we both know it. Silent Wave wasn't supposed to have survivors. And yet here I am." "Yes," Hartley said slowly. "Here you are. The question is, what do we do about it? You leave me alone. I stay dead. Everyone wins. It's not that simple anymore." Hartley pulled out a tablet, showed Mark a photograph. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakably showing someone Mark recognized. Someone else who was supposed to be dead. "Rodriguez," Mark breathed. "Spotted in Morocco 2 weeks ago, then Petrov in Prague, Chen in Hong Kong. The dead are rising, Ghost, and that means Silent Wave wasn't what we thought it was." Mark stared at the photo, his mind racing. 4 survivors now, possibly more. From a mission that had been designed as a trap, a sacrifice, a way to eliminate an entire unit that had learned too much, seen too much, become too dangerous to exist. "They're hunting us," Mark said. It wasn't a question. "They're hunting someone," Hartley confirmed. "The question is whether it's the survivors or the people who tried to kill you. Either way, your peaceful little life here just got a lot more complicated." Mark looked back at his house, where Lily slept peacefully, unaware that her father's past was circling like sharks smelling blood in the water. He'd tried to bury it, to become someone else, but some things refused to stay dead. "I'm not coming back," Mark said firmly. "Whatever game you're playing, whatever operation you're running, I'm out. I have a daughter to raise." "I'm not asking you to come back," Hartley said. "I'm warning you that back might be coming to you. Reed will approach you again, probably tonight. She'll make an emotional appeal, talk about duty and honor and unfinished business. She means well, but she doesn't see the bigger picture." "Which is?" "Silent Wave wasn't a failed mission. It was a successful one, just not the mission any of you thought you were on." Hartley started the engine. "Watch your 6, Ghost, and maybe teach that daughter of yours about more than just butterflies. The world she's growing up in is going to need people like you, whether you want to be needed or not." The window rolled up and the sedan pulled away, leaving Mark standing on the sidewalk in suburban Colorado, feeling the weight of a past that refused to stay buried. Inside, Lily stirred on the couch, mumbling something about purple wings. Mark walked back in, locked the door behind him, and went through the house performing security checks he hadn't done in months. Windows, sight lines, potential entry points. Old habits returning like muscle memory. In the hallway closet, behind a false panel he'd installed their first week in the house, was a go bag. Cash, fake IDs, weapons, everything they'd need to disappear if necessary. He'd hoped never to open it, to let it gather dust until Lily was grown and the past was truly dead. Now he checked its contents, updated the expired supplies, and added something new, Lily's butterfly painting, carefully rolled and protected in plastic. If they had to run, she'd want it. It would be a piece of home to carry with them. The afternoon passed quietly. Lily woke up, they had lunch. She practiced reading while Mark pretended to work on his laptop, but actually monitored security feeds from cameras he'd installed around the property. Everything was normal, peaceful, exactly as it should be. But that evening, after Lily was in bed, her nightlight casting butterfly shadows on the wall, Mark heard a soft knock at the back door. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, pause, 1 tap. Military field code for friend approaching. He opened the door to find Ava, now in civilian clothes, jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, less formal. more like the operator he'd known before ranks and politics had separated them. "I know you said no," she began, "but Hartley already came by," Mark interrupted. "Rodriguez, Petrov, and Chen are alive." Her eyes widened. "How did he—" "Never mind, stupid question. Hartley knows everything." She paused. "Did he tell you about the others?" "What others?" "Johnson and Williams. Both dead, really dead this time. Johnson in a car accident in Miami that was anything but accidental. Williams in a home invasion in Seattle where nothing was stolen but his life." Mark felt the cold hand of reality closing around his throat. Someone was hunting the survivors of Silent Wave, picking them off one by one. And now they knew where he was. "I can protect myself," he said. "I know you can. But can you protect her?" Ava nodded toward the house, toward where Lily slept. "They won't care that she's a child. Whoever is doing this, they're cleaning house, and they won't leave witnesses." It was Mark's worst nightmare. The reason he'd tried so hard to disappear, not fear for himself, but for Lily. She was the vulnerability he couldn't armor against, the weak point in any defense he could mount. "What are you proposing?" "Work with me," Ava said. "Not officially, not returning to service, but as someone who has skin in this game. Help me figure out what Silent Wave really was. Who wanted us dead, and who's hunting us now? The best defense is a good offense," Mark finished. "I know the doctrine, Ava, but I'm not that person anymore." "You were that person this morning," she pointed out. "I watched the security footage from the gym." "You could have destroyed that fighter. Instead, you gave him a lesson in humility without throwing a single offensive strike. That's not the Ghost I knew. That's someone better, someone who's learned to control the violence instead of being controlled by it." Mark was quiet, processing. She was right, and he hated that she was right. This morning had proven that he couldn't fully escape what he was, only channel it differently. "If I help," he said slowly, "Lily stays out of it. Completely. She doesn't know who I was, what I did, any of it. She grows up normal." "As normal as the daughter of a Master Chief SEAL can be," Ava agreed. "But, Mark, normal might not be an option anymore. Not if they've found you." "They haven't. Hartley found me, you found me, but that's different. You knew where to look, knew I had family in this area before Sarah got sick. Whoever's hunting us, they're working from a different playbook." "Maybe. Or maybe they're just saving you for last." The thought hung between them like a blade. Mark had been the team leader, the one who'd called the abort when Silent Wave went sideways, who'd gotten at least some of his people out before everything went to hell. If someone wanted to make a statement, saving him for last would be poetic justice. "Friday," Mark said finally. "Come to the community center Friday evening. There's a self-defense class I'm apparently observing. We can talk more then, somewhere public, somewhere that won't connect back to this house." Ava nodded, understanding the dismissal. "Mark, I'm sorry, about Sarah. I know how much she meant to you." "She meant everything," Mark said simply. "Now Lily means everything, and I'll burn the world to keep her safe." "I know," Ava said softly. "That's what scares me, because the world might just take you up on that offer." She disappeared into the darkness, moving with the practiced stealth of someone who'd spent years becoming one with shadows. Mark locked the door, set the alarms, and went to check on Lily one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant Sarah had given her before the cancer got too bad. Her face was serene, unmarked by loss or fear or the knowledge that monsters were real and sometimes wore human faces. Mark stood in her doorway for a long time, memorizing this moment, this peace, because he could feel it in his bones. The storm was coming. The past he'd tried to bury was clawing its way back to the surface, and when it arrived, nothing would ever be the same. But tonight, his daughter slept safely, dreaming of butterflies with love powers, and Mark would stand guard, a ghost watching over an angel, ready to become the monster again if that's what it took to keep her safe. The special wall caught his eye as he walked to his own room, years of Lily's art documenting her growth, her healing, her journey from a motherless infant to a confident, creative child. Each painting was a small victory, a step away from tragedy toward something beautiful. Tomorrow he'd add the butterfly painting to the collection. Tomorrow he'd continue the charade of being just another single dad in a quiet Colorado town. Tomorrow he'd pretend the past was dead and buried. But tonight he cleaned his weapons, reviewed escape routes, and prepared for war. Because the butterflies were beautiful, but they were also fragile. And Mark had learned long ago that in this world, beauty survived only when something dangerous stood ready to defend it. The ghost was waking up. Heaven help anyone who threatened his daughter's peace. The rest of the week passed with a deceptive normalcy that Mark knew was the calm before the storm. He maintained their routine with military precision. Breakfast at 7, Lily to school at 8, his contractor work until 3, picking her up at 3:30. But beneath the surface, he was preparing. Every mirror became a way to check his six. Every stranger got a threat assessment. Every vehicle that passed their house twice got memorized. Thursday evening found them at the kitchen table, Lily working on homework while Mark helped with math problems. She was struggling with fractions, her little face scrunched in concentration as she tried to understand why 1/2 plus 1/4 didn't equal 2/6. Think of it like pizza, Mark said, drawing circles on a piece of paper. If you have half a pizza and someone gives you a quarter of another pizza, how much do you have? 3/4, Lily exclaimed, the concept suddenly clicking. Because you make them all into the same size pieces first. Exactly. You find common ground. The phrase resonated with him more than it should have. Finding common ground was what he'd need to do with Ava, with whoever was hunting them, with the past that refused to stay buried. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but this time the message was different. Not coordinates, but a photo. Mark's blood chilled as he recognized the image. Lily's school, taken from across the street during recess. She was visible in the playground, laughing with friends, completely unaware she was being watched. "Dad, you okay?" Lily asked, noticing his sudden stillness. "Fine, sweetheart. Just remembered something for work." He deleted the photo, his mind already calculating response options. The message was clear. They knew about Lily, knew she was his pressure point, but sending it was a mistake. It told Mark they were still in the observation phase, not ready to act. If they'd wanted to hurt her, they wouldn't have warned him. "Can we practice my butterfly kata after homework?" Lily asked. It wasn't really a kata, just some basic self-defense moves Mark had taught her, disguised as a dance. She thought it was a game, a special thing between them. She had no idea he was teaching her escape and evasion techniques, how to break a grip, how to run in a zigzag pattern, how to scream in a way that carried. "Sure, butterfly." After homework and bath. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Mark made a call from a burner phone he kept for emergencies. "Yeah?" The voice was gravelly, aged whiskey and too many cigarettes. "Murphy, it's Ghost." There was a long pause. "Jesus Christ, you're supposed to be dead." "So I keep hearing. I need a favor." "You need a favor?" "After 3 years of radio silence, after letting us all think you were fish food, you need a favor." Dennis Murphy had been their intelligence officer, the one who stayed behind the screens while they went into the field. He'd retired before Silent Wave, lucky enough to miss the disaster that followed. Now he ran a private security firm, the kind that asked no questions and kept no records. "Someone's hunting Silent Wave survivors," Mark said. "Johnson and Williams are dead. Someone sent me a photo of my daughter today." "Shit." The anger was gone from Murphy's voice, replaced by professional concern. "How many survivors are there?" "At least 6 that I know of, maybe more. From a mission that had no survivors. That's a hell of a magic trick. Can you put some eyes on my daughter's school?" Discreetly. "I just need to know if someone's watching." "Already done," Murphy said. "The moment you said someone photographed her. I'll have a team there tomorrow. Teachers will think they're evaluating the school for a security upgrade, which, frankly, they need anyway. Their perimeter is a joke." "Thanks, Murph." "Don't thank me yet. If someone's cleaning up Silent Wave, we're all potential targets. Everyone who knew about it, everyone who was connected to it. This isn't just about the operator's ghost. This is about erasing the entire operation from existence." Mark ended the call and went to his bedroom window, looking out at the quiet street. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between streetlights, danger was circling. He could feel it, the way animals sense predators even when they can't see them. Friday arrived gray and overcast, the mountains hidden behind a wall of clouds that promised snow. Mark got Lily to school, watching for surveillance, finding none but knowing that meant nothing. Professionals wouldn't be obvious about it. At work, he went through the motions of being a contractor, fixing a porch for Mrs. Henderson, while his mind ran through tactical scenarios. The community center would be crowded tonight. Friday always brought multiple classes and events. Good for cover, bad for control. Too many variables, too many potential threats or collateral damage. His phone rang. The school. Mr. Dalton? This is Principal Matthews. There's been an incident. Mark's world narrowed to a single point. Is Lily hurt? No, she's fine. But there was a man at the fence during recess trying to talk to her. She did exactly what you taught her. She ran to a teacher immediately. He left before we could confront him, but I thought you should know. I'll be right there. Mark broke several traffic laws getting to the school, his mind calculating probabilities. Someone testing defenses, trying to make him panic and reveal capabilities, or genuine threat assessment before an attempted grab? He found Lily in the principal's office, coloring calmly while Mrs. Matthews hovered nervously nearby. When she saw him, Lily ran into his arms. I did the butterfly escape, Dad. Just like we practiced. You did perfect, sweetheart. He held her tight, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. What did the man say to you? He knew my name. Said he was your friend from work and you sent him to pick me up early. But you always said if that ever happened, they'd know the special word. And he didn't know it, so I ran. The special word. A simple protocol he'd established, hoping never to need it. Only someone Mark personally authorized would know that the word was paintbrush. Lily's first word, after mama and dada. You did exactly right, Mark said, proud and terrified in equal measure. Do you remember what he looked like? Lily scrunched her face, thinking. He was tall, had dark hair with some gray, and he had a mark here, she pointed to her neck, like a purple star, a tattoo or birthmark on the neck. It was something to work with. Mark thanked the principal, assured her he'd handle it, and took Lily home. He called her in sick for the rest of the day, knowing he couldn't protect her if she wasn't with him. Are we in trouble, Dad? Lily asked as they drove home. No, sweetheart. But sometimes bad people do bad things, and we have to be careful. Is that why you taught me the butterfly moves? Yes. Will you teach me more? Mark glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Her face was serious but not scared, processing the morning's events with the resilience children possessed when they felt safe despite danger. If you want to learn, I want to be strong like you. You're already strong, Lily. You proved that today. They spent the afternoon together, Mark working from home while Lily drew at the kitchen table. She seemed unaffected by the morning scare, chattering about her friends and her art projects. But Mark noticed she stayed closer to him than usual, her chair scooted near enough that their arms occasionally touched. As evening approached, Mark faced a dilemma. The meeting at the community center with Jake and potentially Ava was important, but bringing Lily seemed dangerous now. Leaving her with a sitter was out of the question. His phone buzzed. Murphy. Got eyes on your stalker. Rental car's been circling the school and your neighborhood. Driver matches your daughter's description. Want me to have a conversation with him? No, just watch. I need to know who he's working for before we move. Roger that. Also, you should know, there's chatter in the community. Someone's offering big money for information on silent wave survivors. 7 figures for confirmed locations. 7 figures. That was serious money, enough to motivate a lot of dangerous people. It also meant whoever was behind this had resources, probably government or corporate level. Thanks for the heads up. Mark made his decision. They'd go to the community center as planned, but he'd be ready for anything. He packed a bag with supplies, first aid, weapons, cash, burner phones. Then he dressed Lily in clothes suitable for running, tough fabrics, and good shoes, though she didn't notice the tactical nature of his choices. We're going to see some people at the community center, he told her. You can draw in the kids' room while I talk to some adults. But if I say butterfly, what do you do? Drop everything and run to you, she recited. No questions, no arguing, just run. Good girl. The community center was indeed busy when they arrived. basketball practice in the main gym, a pottery class in the arts wing, and Jake's self-defense class in the auxiliary gym. Mark kept Lily's hand in his as they navigated the crowded hallways, his eyes scanning faces, looking for threats. He settled Lily in the children's activity room where several other kids were doing crafts under supervision of two elderly volunteers he recognized and trusted. Mrs. Chen was there too, preparing for tomorrow's art class. "I'll be just down the hall," he told Lily. "You can come get me if you need anything." "Okay, Dad. Go do your boring adult stuff." Mark kissed her forehead and headed to the auxiliary gym. Jake was already there, warming up with several students. The group was smaller than the morning Brotherhood gathering, maybe 15 people, a mix of ages and skill levels. Jake's teaching persona was different from his competitive one, patient and encouraging rather than aggressive. "Mark," Jake called out, "glad you came." "Everyone, this is Mark. He's observing tonight, might join us in the future." There were polite nods and greetings. Mark positioned himself where he could see both the door and the window, his back to a wall. Old habits. The class began with basic warm-ups, then moved into technique work. Jake was actually a good instructor, breaking down complex movements into digestible pieces, ensuring everyone understood not just the how, but the why. Mark found himself genuinely interested despite the circumstances. 20 minutes into the class, Ava arrived. She'd changed from her morning civilian clothes into workout gear that didn't quite hide the weapon she had concealed at her ankle. Their eyes met across the room, an entire conversation in a glance. She'd seen something. He nodded slightly. He knew. Jake noticed her entrance. "Welcome."
"First time?" "Yes," Ava said, playing the newcomer perfectly. "I heard you had a good program here. Always happy to have new students. We're working on defensive positioning right now." "Mark, would you mind partnering with Ava?" she supplied. "Would you mind partnering with Ava? Show her the basics while I work with the others?" It was almost too convenient, but Mark went along with it. They moved to a corner of the mat, speaking in low voices while appearing to practice. "Two vehicles outside," Ava murmured while demonstrating a wrist release. "Both arrived after you did." "One's mine," Mark replied, adjusting her grip. "Murphy has eyes on. The other?" "Black SUV, government plates. Not mine." They moved through the techniques, their conversation hidden beneath the appearance of instruction. "Hartley?" Mark suggested. "Possible. Or whoever's hunting us got tired of waiting." "My daughter's here." "Down the hall." Ava's expression tightened. "Then we need to be very careful how this plays out." The class continued, but Mark's attention was divided. Every few minutes, he'd glance toward the door, expecting trouble. The paranoia that had kept him alive in hostile territories was screaming that something was wrong. Then Lily appeared in the doorway, holding her art supplies, and Mark's blood froze. Behind her was a man he didn't recognize, hand on her shoulder, guiding her into the room. "Daddy!" Lily called out, not sensing danger. "This man said you wanted me to come here." The room's energy shifted instantly. Jake and his students sensed something wrong, even if they didn't understand what. Ava's hand drifted toward her ankle. Mark forced himself to remain calm, walking toward his daughter with measured steps. "Hey, sweetheart." "Thanks for bringing her," he said to the man, his voice level. "I don't think we've met." The man was average height, average build, with features designed to be forgotten. But his eyes were sharp, calculating, and Mark recognized the type immediately. Intelligence operative, probably CIA or NSA, definitely dangerous. "Agent Carter," the man said, not offering a hand. "We need to talk, Master Chief, privately. I'm just Mark. And anything you need to say can be said here." "I don't think you want that." Carter's grip on Lily's shoulder tightened slightly. Not enough to hurt, just enough to make a point. "Too many civilians." The temperature in the room dropped. Jake stepped forward, not understanding the full situation but recognizing a threat to a child. "Hey, let go of the kid." Carter ignored him, eyes locked on Mark. 5 minutes. That's all I need. Then you and your daughter can go back to your quiet little life." Mark calculated distances, angles, probabilities. Carter was positioned perfectly. Any aggressive move would put Lily at risk. The agent knew his business. "Lily," Mark said calmly,
Go to Ava. But now, butterfly, the code word. Lily's training kicked in, and she twisted out of Carter's grip with the fluid motion Mark had taught her, darting to Ava, who pulled her behind her body protectively. Carter smiled, cold and thin. Impressive. You've trained her well, though I wonder what child services would think about a father teaching his 8-year-old combat techniques. State your business, Mark growled, no longer pretending to be just a suburban dad. Outside, you and me. The commander can watch your daughter. Carter glanced at Ava. Yes, I know who you are too. This whole reunion is touching, really. Mark looked at Ava, who nodded. She'd protect Lily with her life if necessary. He knew that, trusted it. 5 minutes, Mark agreed. They walked out together, Carter leading the way with the confidence of someone who held all the cards. Behind them, Mark could hear Jake asking Ava what was happening, her calm voice deflecting his questions. In the parking lot, Carter stopped beside the black SUV. Nice setup you have here. Good cover, believable backstory. Would have fooled most people. What do you want? Silent wave. Ancient history. Hardly. Carter pulled out a tablet, showed Mark a series of photos. Rodriguez in Morocco, but recent photos showed him dead. A single bullet wound to the head. Petrov in Prague, same result. Chen in Hong Kong, throat cut. Your teammates are being eliminated, professionally, efficiently. Someone's cleaning house. And you think I'm next? I know you're next. The question is whether you want our protection or prefer to handle it yourself. Mark studied the photos, noting details. Different methods, but all precise, professional. This wasn't revenge killing, it was surgical removal. Why does the agency care? Because Silent Wave wasn't supposed to fail. You were sent to retrieve something, and according to our intelligence, you succeeded. But the item never made it back. So either you have it, one of your teammates has it, or it's still out there. Either way, someone's willing to kill to ensure it stays buried. The item. Mark remembered it. A drive containing financial records that implicated several major corporations in funding terrorism. They'd retrieved it, but in the chaos of the ambush, when everything went to hell. It was destroyed, Mark lied smoothly. Blown up with half my team. Carter studied him for a long moment. I don't believe you. Neither does whoever's hunting your team. They're not going to stop Dalton. And next time, they won't just photograph your daughter. Is that a threat? It's reality. Work with us, and we can protect you both. Refuse, and you're on your own against an enemy with unlimited resources and no moral boundaries. Mark was about to respond when he heard a commotion from inside the community center. Shouts, the sound of breaking glass, then an alarm. Lily! He ran, Carter forgotten, pure parental instinct overriding tactical thinking. The hallway was chaos, people streaming out of various rooms. Mark fought against the flow, heading for the auxiliary gym. He found Jake's class in disarray, several students on the ground, Jake himself holding a bloody nose. But no Ava, no Lily. Where are they? Mark grabbed Jake's shoulder. 2 men came through the window, Jake gasped. Your friend Ava, she fought them, told the little girl to run. They went after them both. Mark's world crystallized into a single purpose. He moved through the building like a hunting wolf, following signs of struggle. Overturned furniture in the kids' room, blood droplets leading toward the rear exit, a child's drawing, Lily's butterfly, crumpled on the floor. The rear parking lot was darker, fewer lights. Mark saw them immediately, 2 men trying to force Ava into a van while she fought viciously. Lily was nowhere to be seen. Mark didn't announce himself, didn't warn them. He simply acted. The first man never saw him coming, a precise strike to the kidney dropping him instantly. The second turned, reaching for a weapon, but Mark was already inside his guard. An elbow to the solar plexus, a knee to the face as he doubled over, then a chokehold that put him to sleep in seconds. Lily? Mark called out, scanning the area. Here, Dad! Her voice came from behind a dumpster where Ava had apparently told her to hide. She ran to him and he scooped her up, holding her tight while keeping his eyes on the unconscious attackers. You okay? He asked Ava, who was leaning against the van, breathing hard. Been better. These weren't amateurs, Mark. Professional contractors, probably military trained. Carter appeared, weapon drawn, surveying the scene. This is what I was trying to prevent. They're escalating. Mark set Lily down but kept her close. Who are they? We don't know. That's the problem. Someone with resources, connections, and a very specific interest in Silent Wave. One of the attackers groaned, starting to come around. Mark knelt beside him, and when the man's eyes focused, he saw recognition there. And fear. Ghost, the man whispered. You're supposed to be dead. A lot of that going around. Who sent you? The man's eyes darted to Lily, then back to Mark. They said you had something. Said to retrieve it by any means necessary. Who said? But the man's eyes rolled back, foam appearing at his mouth. Cyanide capsule hidden in a false tooth. Old school, effective, and telling. Whoever was behind this was serious enough to use suicide assets. We need to go, Ava said urgently. Local police will be here soon. Mark looked at Carter. That protection you mentioned? Still on the table. Not interested. But I'll make you a different deal. You keep your people away from my daughter, and I'll find out who's hunting Silent Wave survivors. That's not how this works. It is now. Mark's voice carried the authority of someone who'd made life and death decisions in places where diplomacy was measured in bullets. I'm not your asset, Carter. But our interests align for now. You want to know about Silent Wave? So do I. But I do this my way, on my terms. Carter considered, then nodded slowly. Fine. But we'll be watching. You always are. Sirens were approaching. Mark picked up Lily, who buried her face in his shoulder, overwhelmed by the evening's events. This wasn't the childhood he'd wanted for her, wasn't the normal life he'd tried to build. We're going home, he told Ava. Tomorrow, we talk about next steps. Mark, she said quietly, this is just the beginning. They failed tonight, but they'll try again. I know. He looked down at the dead attacker, at the foam still on his lips. But now they know I'm not dead, and that changes everything. As they walked back through the community center, Jake intercepted them. His nose had stopped bleeding, but his eyes were wide with adrenaline and confusion. What the hell was that? Who are you people? Mark adjusted Lily in his arms, feeling her weight, her trust. We're the people who are going to make sure this never happens here again. Is that a threat? No. It's a promise. Your students did well tonight, stayed calm under pressure. But they're not ready for real violence. If you want, I can help change that. Jake looked at him for a long moment, then at Lily, who was watching him with those big green eyes despite her exhaustion. Monday? Jake asked. Monday, Mark agreed. They drove home in silence, Lily dozing in the back seat despite the excitement. Mark's mind was already working through the implications. Silent Wave's secrets were coming to light, and with them, the ghosts of decisions made in places where morality was a luxury they couldn't afford. At the house, Mark carried Lily to her room, tucking her in with extra care. She stirred, looking up at him with sleepy confusion. Dad? Are we safe? He wanted to lie, to preserve her innocence a little longer, but she'd earned better than that tonight. She'd been brave, had followed instructions, had trusted him even when scared. We're together, he said finally. And as long as we're together, we'll handle whatever comes. Like butterflies. What do you mean, sweetheart? Butterflies look fragile, but they migrate thousands of miles. They survive storms and predators and everything else, because they keep flying. Mark kissed her forehead, marveling at the wisdom of children. Exactly like butterflies. He left her door cracked, the nightlight casting its familiar shadows. Then he went to his room and opened the safe he'd installed in the floor of his closet. Inside, among weapons and cash and fake passports, was a small waterproof container. He opened it, revealing a flash drive. The drive from Silent Wave. The one he'd told everyone was destroyed. The one that contained enough information to bring down governments and corporations to start wars or end them. He'd kept it as insurance, never intending to use it. But now, with Lily threatened and his teammates dying, insurance might not be enough. It might be time to go on the offensive. Mark closed the safe and went to the window, looking out at the quiet street. Somewhere out there, enemies were regrouping, planning their next move. But they'd made a critical error tonight. They'd threatened his daughter. They'd forced him to show his hand. The ghost was fully awake now. And ghosts, as everyone knew, were incredibly hard to kill twice. His phone buzzed. A text from Murphy. Package delivered. Check your door. Mark found a manila envelope on his doorstep, no indication of who had left it. Inside were photographs, surveillance shots of the men who'd attacked them tonight. But these were taken days ago, showing them watching his house, following him to work, stalking Lily's school. They'd been under surveillance for days, maybe weeks. The attack tonight wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, coordinated. Which meant there were more players in this game than just Carter and whoever was hunting Silent Wave survivors. The last photo stopped his heart. It was Sarah's grave, fresh flowers placed there. Flowers he hadn't left. Someone was sending a message, but Mark couldn't tell if it was a threat or something else entirely. He looked at the timestamp on the photo. This morning, while he was sparring with Jake, someone had visited his wife's grave during the exact time they knew he'd be distracted. A second text from Murphy. There's more. Meet me tomorrow. Bring coffee. The good stuff. Mark deleted the texts and burned the photos in the sink, washing the ashes down the drain. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new decisions. But tonight, his daughter was safe, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos that had touched their lives. He made one more round of the house, checking windows, doors, sightlines. Everything was secure, but security was an illusion. The only real safety came from being more dangerous than your enemies, and Mark had spent years trying not to be dangerous at all. That luxury was gone now. The father could no longer pretend the warrior didn't exist. They were the same person, always had been. The only question was how to balance both roles without losing himself in either. In her room, Lily murmured in her sleep, something about purple wings and love powers. Mark stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, and made a promise to Sarah's memory and to the universe itself. No one would hurt their little girl. No one would take away her butterflies and rainbows and innocent joy. He would stand between her and the darkness, would become the darkness if necessary, to keep her in the light. The community center attack had been a declaration of war, but wars were won by those who understood the battlefield best, and Mark had been studying battlefields his entire adult life. Tomorrow, he would begin gathering intelligence, building alliances, preparing for the conflict ahead. But tonight, he was just a dad, watching over his daughter, ready to face whatever monsters came calling. The butterflies on her wall seemed to dance in the nightlight's glow, fragile and beautiful and stronger than they appeared, just like the little girl who'd painted them, just like the life they'd built together, just like the love that would make Mark move mountains or burn them down, whatever it took to keep her safe. The war was coming, but for now, in this moment, there was peace. And Mark stood guard over it, a ghost in the darkness, a father in the light, ready for whatever dawn would bring. Saturday morning arrived with a frost that painted the windows in crystalline patterns, the kind of delicate artwork that Lily would normally spend minutes examining before breakfast. But she was subdued today, pushing eggs around her plate while Mark made coffee, both of them carrying the weight of last night's violence in different ways. "Dad," she said finally, "those men wanted to hurt us." "Yes," Mark replied, seeing no point in lying. "But they didn't succeed. Because you stopped them. Because we were prepared. Because you listened and did exactly what you were supposed to do." He sat beside her, abandoning his coffee. "You were very brave." "I was scared," she admitted, her voice small. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what needs to be done despite the fear." Mark touched her chin gently, lifting her eyes to meet his. "You're the bravest person I know." She managed a small smile, then surprised him by asking, "Were you a soldier? Before Mom got sick?" The question hung between them, a bridge between the life he'd tried to leave behind and the one they'd built together. Mark had always known this moment would come, had rehearsed various answers, but none of them seemed adequate now. "Something like that," he said carefully. "I helped protect people." "Is that why those men came? Because of something you did before?" "I think so, yes." Lily absorbed this information with the remarkable adaptability of children, then asked the question that mattered most to her. "Are more bad men coming?" "Maybe." but I won't let them hurt you. Promise? With my whole heart. She nodded, seemingly satisfied, and returned to her breakfast with slightly more enthusiasm. Mark's phone buzzed. Murphy, with an address and a time. The meeting would have to wait until he could arrange protection for Lily. As if reading his thoughts, his daughter said, "Can I stay with Mrs. Chen today? She said she'd teach me Chinese watercolor techniques if I ever had a free Saturday." Mrs. Chen lived in a secure building with good sightlines and limited access points. More importantly, she was former Taiwanese intelligence, though she'd never admitted it directly. Her retirement to teaching art was cover as much as passion. She'd keep Lily safe. Mark made the call, and Mrs. Chen agreed immediately, her tone suggesting she understood more than he was saying. They drove over together, Mark taking a circuitous route, checking for tails. The city was waking up slowly, families heading to soccer games and farmers' markets, living lives untouched by the shadows that had crept into his. Mrs. Chen met them at her door, her weathered face kind but her eyes sharp. "Lily, I have special paper from Beijing perfect for butterfly paintings." As Lily eagerly followed her inside, Mrs. Chen caught Mark's arm. "How long?" "Few hours, maybe more." "She'll be safe." It wasn't a question. Mrs. Chen's apartment was a fortress disguised as an artist's studio, with reinforced doors, bulletproof glass, and several escape routes Mark had identified the first time Lily had visited. "Thank you," Mark said, meaning more than just the babysitting. "We protect our own," Mrs. Chen replied simply, then closed the door with the series of locks clicking into place. Murphy had chosen a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where truckers and shift workers grabbed coffee and nobody asked questions. Mark found him in a back booth, looking older than his years but with eyes that missed nothing. "You look like hell," Murphy said by way of greeting. "Thanks. You said you had information?" Murphy slid a tablet across the table. Silent Wave wasn't what we thought. None of it was. Mark looked at the screen, seeing classified documents that shouldn't exist, satellite imagery that had supposedly been destroyed, communication intercepts that told a different story than the official report. "We weren't sent to retrieve terrorist financing records," Murphy continued. "That was cover. The real target was this." He swiped to a new image, a photograph of a young girl, maybe 12 years old, with distinctive heterochromatic eyes, one blue, one green. "Who is she?" "Natasha Volkov, daughter of Russian operative Viktor Volkov and American asset Margaret Chen, the product of a Cold War romance that went sideways. She has a unique genetic marker that makes her immune to certain biological weapons, weapons that officially don't exist." Mark studied the photo, pieces clicking into place. Someone wanted to weaponize her immunity. Or protect it. Depends on which report you believe. The Russians thought we had her. We thought the Russians grabbed her in the chaos. But according to this, Murphy swiped again, showing a death certificate, she died in the crossfire. But her body was never recovered. And now, 7 years later, someone's killing everyone who was there that night. You think she's alive? I think someone knows what really happened to her, and they're cleaning house before that information gets out. Murphy leaned back, his coffee untouched and cold. There's more. Remember Thompson? He died in the initial ambush. That's what we were told. But I found this in some NSA intercepts from last month. The image was grainy, taken from a distance, but the face was unmistakable. Staff Sergeant Derek Thompson, very much alive, sitting at a cafe in Budapest. Son of a bitch, Mark breathed. How many of us actually died that night? That's the million-dollar question. The official report says everyone except you and now Reed. But we've got confirmed sightings of at least 6 teammates, and now Thompson makes 7. Either someone's doing a hell of a job with lookalikes, or Silent Wave was compartmentalized beyond anything we understood. Mark's mind was racing. If Thompson was alive, if half the team had survived, then the entire narrative of Silent Wave was fabricated, which meant someone had orchestrated not just a mission, but an elaborate deception that had lasted 7 years. Why now? Mark asked. Why start hunting survivors after all this time? Something changed 3 weeks ago. Murphy pulled out a newspaper clipping from a French paper. Recognize her. The woman in the photo was professionally dressed, addressing the UN Council on Human Rights. But those eyes, one blue, one green, were unmistakable. "Natasha Volkov," Mark said quietly. "She's alive." Going by the name Dr. Natalie Voss now, prominent advocate for biological weapons treaties. And according to my sources, she's been asking questions about a certain military operation from 7 years ago. She's looking for us. Or someone wants us to think she is. Either way, the timing's not coincidental. She surfaces, and suddenly silent wave survivors start dying. Mark's phone rang. Mrs. Chen. "We have visitors," she said calmly, but Mark heard the tension underneath. 3 men, professional, watching the building. "Don't engage. I'm 10 minutes out. Lily's safe. We're in the special room." The special room, Mrs. Chen's panic room, disguised as a supply closet. Mark had helped her design it, never thinking it would be needed. "Murphy, I need backup. Now." "Already moving," Murphy said, pulling out his phone and sending rapid texts. "I've got assets nearby. They'll provide overwatch." They took Murphy's vehicle, a modified SUV with armor plating and run-flat tires. As they drove, Mark checked his weapons, the Glock 19 he always carried, a backup .38, and the knife that had saved his life more times than he could count. "This is escalating fast," Murphy observed, taking corners at speeds that should have been reckless, but somehow weren't. They're targeting pressure points. First the school, then the community center, now this. They're trying to force me into the open. Or they're trying to grab leverage. Murphy's expression was grim. "Your daughter's the only thing that could make you cooperate with whatever they want." They reached Mrs. Chen's building to find it surrounded by an unusual amount of activity. Food delivery trucks that weren't delivering food, utility workers who moved wrong for their supposed jobs, pedestrians who paid too much attention to their phones while watching the building. "At least 6 assets," Murphy counted. "This isn't a grab team. It's a containment operation." "They're not trying to get in," Mark realized. "They're making sure we can't get out." His phone rang. Unknown number. "Master Chief Dalton." The voice was cultured, European accent, probably Eastern European. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The drive from Silent Wave." "The real one, not the decoy you gave your handlers. I know you kept it as insurance. I'm willing to trade for it." "Trade what?" "Your daughter's safety, of course, and perhaps some answers about that night, about who really died and who really lived, about why you were sent there in the first place." Mark gestured to Murphy to trace the call, but Murphy was already working on it, fingers flying over his equipment. "I'm listening," Mark said, buying time. "The girl you were sent to retrieve, she was never the real objective. She was bait. The entire operation was designed to eliminate your unit, but not for the reasons you think." "Enlighten me." "Your team had become too effective, too independent. You'd learned things through your operations that certain people needed to keep buried. Silent Wave was supposed to be a clean sweep. Eliminate the team while making it look like a failed operation. But it actually failed." "Did it?" "Half your team survived, scattered to the wind with new identities. The girl lived, hidden and protected, until she could disappear into a new life. And you kept the drive, the real proof of what happened. I'd say the operation succeeded perfectly, just not in the way anyone intended." Murphy held up his tablet. He had a location. The call was coming from inside Mrs. Chen's building. "You're already inside," Mark said. "Very good. Your reputation is deserved. I'm in apartment 4B, 3 floors below your daughter. I came alone as a sign of good faith. Will you meet me, or shall we continue this elaborate dance until someone gets hurt?" Mark looked at Murphy, who shrugged. It was clearly a trap, but sometimes the only way out of a trap was through it. 5 minutes. If I don't like what I hear, you won't leave that apartment alive." Dramatic but fair. I'll leave the door open. Mark entered the building through the service entrance, Murphy providing overwatch from across the street. The surveillance teams didn't try to stop him. Apparently this meeting was what they'd been orchestrating all along. Apartment 4B was modest but strategically located, with good views of both the street and the building's main entrance. The door was indeed open. Mark entered with his weapon drawn, finding a single man sitting casually in an armchair, hands visible, no apparent weapons. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that could blend into any European city. But his eyes were distinctive, cold, intelligent, and familiar. Viktor Volkov, Mark said. Natasha's father. Former father. She believes I'm dead, which is for the best. Volkov gestured to a chair across from him. Please sit. We have much to discuss and little time. Talk. 7 years ago, my daughter was taken by people who wanted to use her unique genetics for weapons development. Both our governments sent teams to retrieve her. Yours got there first, but the extraction went wrong. We were ambushed. No, you were betrayed. By your own handler, the same person who's now hunting the survivors. Mark kept his expression neutral, but inside, pieces were falling into place. Their handler for Silent Wave had been Colonel David Morrison, a man who disappeared after the operation, supposedly killed in a car accident 2 months later. Morrison's dead, Mark said. David Morrison is dead. But the man you knew as Morrison is very much alive. His real name is Dmitry Kozlov, a double agent who'd been playing both sides for years. Bullshit. Volkov pulled out a tablet, showed Mark a series of photographs. Morrison at various stages of his career, but with subtle differences. Scars that appeared and disappeared, facial features that didn't quite match when examined closely. He used doubles, body modifications, an entire constructed identity. The real Morrison died 15 years ago. Kozlov took his place and used his position to manipulate operations for his own agenda. Which was? Power. Information. Control. Your team had uncovered pieces of his network through various operations. Silent Wave was his solution. Eliminate everyone who might expose him while acquiring my daughter as a bargaining chip. But it failed. Thanks to you. You called the abort, got half your team out. More importantly, you secured the real intelligence, not just the financial records, but the communication intercepts that proved Morrison was compromised. Mark thought about the drive hidden in his safe. He'd never fully analyzed its contents, keeping it only as insurance. Now he wondered what else was on it. Why should I believe you? Because I'm not asking for the drive. I'm asking for your help. Volkov leaned forward. My daughter doesn't know who she really is. She's built a life as Natalie Voss, believes her parents died when she was young. But Kozlov knows she's alive, knows her genetics could still be valuable. He's eliminating Silent Wave survivors not to hide the past, but to clear the board for a new operation, to grab her again. Yes, and this time there won't be a team to stop him. Mark's phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen. All clear. Visitors gone. The surveillance teams had pulled back. Either this meeting had achieved its purpose or something else was happening. I need proof, Mark said. Something more than photos and theories. Volkov stood, walked to the window. Tomorrow, 1400 hours, Thompson will contact you. He's been Kozlov's asset for years, the inside man who helped orchestrate Silent Wave. He'll offer you a deal, the drive for your daughter's safety and new identities for both of you. How do you know this? Because I've been tracking Kozlov for 7 years. I know his patterns, his assets, his plans. Thompson's offer will be genuine, but acceptance means Kozlov wins. He gets the evidence that could expose him and eliminates the last person who could identify him, you. Why do you care? Your daughter's safe. For now. But Kozlov's moving towards something bigger. The bioweapon programs my daughter's immunity could unlock. He wants to sell that capability to the highest bidder. Imagine a world where one side could deploy biological weapons their enemies couldn't defend against. The implications were staggering. It would shift the entire global balance of power, make nuclear weapons obsolete. Wars would be won with viruses, not missiles. What do you propose? We work together. You have the evidence to expose Kozlov. I have the resources to protect your daughter and eliminate his network. Together we can end this before it truly begins. Mark stood, decision made. I need to verify what you've told me. If Thompson contacts me tomorrow as you predict, we'll talk again. Fair enough. Volkov handed him a card with only a phone number. When you're ready. But don't wait too long. Kozlov's patience is not infinite, and your daughter's safety becomes less certain with each passing day. Mark left the apartment, finding Murphy waiting in the hallway. I heard everything, Murphy said, tapping his earpiece. Could be truth, could be an elaborate con. Only one way to find out. We wait for Thompson's call. They retrieved Lily from Mrs. Chen's panic room, finding her calmly painting with watercolors as if nothing had happened. The resilience of children never ceased to amaze Mark. "Did you finish your business, Dad?" Lily asked, not looking up from her work. "For now, sweetheart." "Good. Look, I painted you." The painting showed a figure standing between a small girl in dark shadows, arms spread wide like wings, like a butterfly, but also like a shield. "It's beautiful," Mark said, throat tight. "Mrs. Chen taught me about negative space," Lily explained, "how sometimes what you don't paint is as important as what you do." The wisdom in that observation wasn't lost on Mark. The spaces between the lies, the gaps in the official story, the absence where truth should be, those negative spaces were painting a picture of their own. That evening, back at home with security measures tripled and Murphy's team providing discreet surveillance, Mark finally opened the drive from Silent Wave. Not the decoy he'd given his handlers, but the real one, hidden for 7 years. What he found changed everything. Communication intercepts between Morrison and unknown parties, discussing the elimination of his team. Financial records showing payments to Thompson and 2 other team members who'd supposedly died. Medical files on Natasha Volkov that detailed not just her immunity, but something else. She was pregnant during the operation. Someone had been experimenting on her, using her unique genetics to create something new. But most damning was a video file, corrupted but partially recoverable. It showed Morrison meeting with someone whose face was obscured, but whose voice was clear. They were discussing the real purpose of Silent Wave, not to retrieve or eliminate anyone, but to test a new bioweapon on Mark's team. The ambush site had been prepared with an aerosol agent that should have killed everyone within minutes. The fact that half the team survived meant something had gone wrong, or perhaps right, from a certain perspective. Mark's phone rang at exactly 1400 hours the next day, just as Volkov had predicted. "Ghost," Thompson's voice was exactly as Mark remembered. "We need to talk." "I thought you were dead, Thompson." "We're all dead, officially. But official's never been our strong suit, has it?" "What do you want?" "To make a deal. You have something my employer needs. I'm authorized to offer you everything, new identities, enough money to disappear forever, and most importantly, guaranteed safety for your daughter. In exchange for the drive. The real one. We know you kept it." Mark was silent, processing. Volkov had been right about the contact, the timing, even the offer, which meant he was probably right about the rest. "I need time to think. 24 hours, then the offer expires and other methods become necessary." The line went dead. Mark looked at Lily, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, humming softly to herself. She'd adapted to their new reality with remarkable grace, accepting the security measures and constant vigilance as just another aspect of life with Dad. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. "We need to meet." "I found something." An hour later, after dropping Lily at another secured location with Mrs. Chen, Mark met Ava at a park on the edge of town. She looked tired, stressed in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "I've been digging into Morrison's files," she said without preamble, "using some contacts at Naval Intelligence." Mark, he knew. Knew what? About Sarah, about her cancer. The medical reports show she was exposed to a chemical agent 2 years before diagnosis, the same signature as weapons Morrison's unit had access to. The world tilted. Mark had to sit down on a nearby bench, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "He poisoned my wife?" "I think so. You were getting too close to something in your investigations. Sarah was leverage, a way to control you, get you emotionally compromised, distracted. But she got sick after I retired. The agent has a long incubation period. By the time symptoms appeared, there'd be no way to trace it back." Ava sat beside him, her hand briefly touching his. "I'm sorry, Mark. I'm so fucking sorry." Rage built in Mark's chest, cold and purposeful. Not the hot anger of immediate betrayal, but the frozen fury of premeditated vengeance. Morrison, Kozlov, had killed Sarah as surely as if he'd put a gun to her head, had made Mark watch her waste away, had left Lily motherless, all to protect his secrets. "Where is he?" "I don't know yet, but Thompson might." Mark stood, decision crystallizing. Then we take Thompson. Find out what he knows. That's not the Mark Dalton way. You're the one who finds peaceful solutions. That man died with his wife. What's left is someone who's very good at war. Mark looked at Ava, and she saw something in his eyes that made her step back. They took Sarah from me. They threatened Lily. There's no peaceful solution anymore. What about your daughter? She needs her father, not a weapon. She needs to be safe, and she won't be until every last one of them is gone. They spent the rest of the day planning. Thompson would expect Mark to come alone to whatever meeting he proposed. But Mark wouldn't be alone. Murphy's assets, Ava's resources, even Volkov's network if necessary, they'd all converge to end this. That night, Mark sat with Lily as she prepared for bed. She was drawing again, always drawing, processing the world through art the way her mother had. "Dad," she said suddenly, "are you going to have to go away?" The question caught him off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "You have the same look Mom had before she went to the hospital the last time. Like you're saying goodbye." Mark pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I'm not going anywhere, Butterfly. I promise. But you might have to fight the bad men." "Maybe. Will you win?" Mark thought about all the training, all the operations, all the times he'd walked into hell and walked back out. But this was different. This was personal. "Yes," he said simply, "I'll win." "Good." Lily pulled back, looking at him with those green eyes that were so much like Sarah's. "Because I already lost Mom. I can't lose you too." "You won't. Ever." Later, after Lily was asleep, Mark stood in his garage looking at the tactical gear he'd hidden there. Body armor that had saved his life in countless operations. Weapons that were extensions of his will. Equipment that could turn a single man into a force multiplier. He thought this part of his life was over. Had tried to bury Ghost and become just Mark, just Dad. But some ghosts refused to stay buried. Some debts demanded payment in blood. His phone rang. Thompson again. "Tomorrow, noon, the abandoned warehouse on Route 7. Come alone, bring the drive." "I'll be there." "Smart choice, Ghost. This is the best way to keep your daughter safe." Mark hung up without responding. Thompson had no idea what was coming. None of them did. They'd awakened something that should have been left sleeping, had threatened the one thing that mattered more than life itself. Tomorrow, the ghost would rise one last time. And when the dust settled, either Mark and Lily would be free, or he'd take everyone involved down with him. There were no other options, no middle ground. He looked at the photo of Sarah he kept in the garage, her smile radiant despite the chemo. She'd made him promise to be happy, to find peace, to raise Lily with love instead of loss. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered to the photo. "I tried to be what you wanted. But they won't let us have peace, so I have to be what I was trained to be one more time." The photo smiled back, unchanging, and Mark could almost hear her voice. "Protect our baby. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes." The butterfly drawings on Lily's wall might represent transformation and beauty, but butterflies started as caterpillars, and before they could fly, they had to dissolve into primordial soup, restructuring themselves completely. Tomorrow, Mark would dissolve the peaceful facade and restructure himself into something necessary, something dangerous, something final. The war was no longer coming. It had arrived, and Master Chief Mark Dalton, call sign Ghost, was ready to end it once and for all. The warehouse on Route 7 stood like a monument to industrial decay, its corrugated walls bleeding rust in patterns that looked like dried blood in the noon sun. Mark parked his truck a quarter-mile away, in the lot of an abandoned gas station where Murphy's team had established their overwatch position. He could feel them watching through scopes, calculating angles, preparing for violence that might never come or might explode in seconds. "Comms check." Murphy's voice crackled in his earpiece, barely audible. "Lima Charlie," Mark responded, loud and clear. "Ava's in position on the north side. I've got 2 shooters on the roof of the building across the street. Thompson arrived 20 minutes ago. 3 vehicles, at least 8 men. 8 men for what was supposed to be a simple exchange. Thompson wasn't taking chances, which meant he probably wasn't planning to let Mark leave alive, regardless of whether he brought the drive. Mark checked his equipment one final time. The Glock 19 in his shoulder holster, the backup 38 on his ankle, the ceramic knife that wouldn't show up on metal detectors, and the real surprise, a small device Murphy had provided that would scramble electronic signals within a 50-foot radius when activated. The drive in his pocket was real, but corrupted, its data deliberately damaged to buy time if things went sideways. The walk to the warehouse felt longer than any approach he'd made in combat zones. This wasn't Afghanistan or Syria, where violence was expected. This was Colorado, 20 minutes from where his daughter was finger painting in art class, blissfully unaware that her father was walking into what might be his last mission. The main door was open, an invitation and a threat. Mark entered slowly, letting his eyes adjust to the dimness. The warehouse was mostly empty, abandoned machinery creating shadows and potential cover throughout the space. Thompson stood in the center, dressed in civilian clothes that didn't quite hide the bulletproof vest underneath. "Ghost," Thompson called out, his voice echoing. "Good to see you again." "Wish I could say the same." Mark stopped 30 feet away, hands visible but ready. "You look good for a dead man." Death was liberating. No more orders, no more conscience, just purpose and profit. "Is that what you call betraying your brothers? Purpose?" Thompson's expression hardened. "We were tools, Ghost. Expendable assets in games we never understood. I just chose to switch sides before they could discard me." "They? You mean Morrison, among others." Thompson gestured to his men who emerged from behind machinery and shadows, weapons not quite pointed at Mark, but ready. "The drive, Ghost. That's all we want. Hand it over and you walk away." "What about the others? Rodriguez, Petrov, Chen? Your new friends killed them all. Loose ends, but you're different. You have a daughter, something to live for. They respect that, believe it or not." Mark pulled out the drive, holding it up so Thompson could see it. "This little thing caused all this death?" "That little thing could destroy careers, topple governments, start wars, or prevent them in the right hands. Whose hands would those be? Does it matter? You're out, remember? Just a dad in Colorado who wants to raise his daughter in peace." It was the callback to Mark's own words that made him realize Thompson had been listening, probably for years. Every conversation near a phone, every moment of perceived privacy, all of it compromised. "You've been watching us," Mark said. It wasn't a question. "Morrison's orders. Keep tabs on the survivors. Make sure nobody talked. You were so good, Ghost. 3 years of being nobody. If that reporter hadn't started digging into Silent Wave, if Volkov's daughter hadn't surfaced, you could have stayed dead forever. But the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. Morrison needs that drive destroyed, needs the last witnesses eliminated. It's nothing personal." "You poisoned Sarah," Mark said quietly. "You made it personal." Thompson's expression flickered, something that might have been regret passing across his features. "That wasn't me. Morrison acted alone on that."
"I didn't even know until after she died. But you knew eventually. And you said nothing. What would have been the point? She was already gone." Mark felt the rage building again, cold and purposeful. Sarah's death hadn't just been collateral damage. It had been a calculated move in a game he hadn't even known he was playing. "The drive," Thompson said, extending his hand. "Let's end this, Ghost. You don't want to die here. Think of Lily." "I am thinking of her." Mark tossed the drive, a gentle underhand throw that Thompson caught easily. "That's all I've been thinking about." Thompson pulled out a scanner, checking the drive's authenticity. The device beeped green. It recognized the encryption signature, confirmed it as genuine. What it couldn't detect was the corrupted data within, the careful damage Murphy had inflicted that would make the files unreadable. "Smart man," Thompson said, pocketing the drive. "Now turn around and walk away. Disappear again. Take your daughter and find another quiet town where—" The window exploded, not from a bullet, but from a smoke grenade that filled the warehouse with thick white clouds. Mark dropped immediately, rolling behind a rusted conveyor belt as automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple directions. This wasn't Murphy's team. They would have warned him. Through the smoke, Mark saw muzzle flashes from the catwalks above. Thompson's men were falling, tactical precision taking them apart. Someone else had crashed the party, someone with professional training and murderous intent. "Ambush!" Thompson screamed, finding cover behind a concrete pillar. "Morrison, you bastard!" The betrayal in Thompson's voice told Mark everything. Morrison, Kozlov, had decided to clean house completely. No witnesses, no loose ends, just bodies in an abandoned warehouse that would make the news as a gang conflict or drug deal gone wrong. Mark activated the signal scrambler, killing communications for everyone within 50 feet. Then he moved, using the smoke and chaos as cover. One of Thompson's men stumbled past, disoriented. Mark took him down with a chokehold, acquiring his weapon, an MP5 with a full magazine. The smoke was starting to clear, revealing the new players. 6 operators in black tactical gear, no insignia, moving with the coordinated efficiency of special forces. They were systematically eliminating Thompson's team, but Mark noticed they were being careful not to hit him. Orders to take him alive, probably. They needed to confirm the drive was destroyed before killing him. "Ghost!" Thompson's voice cut through the gunfire. "Morrison played us both!" Mark found Thompson pinned down, bleeding from a shoulder wound, his men dead or dying around him. Their eyes met across the chaos, 2 warriors who'd been on opposite sides now facing a common enemy. "Sarah," Mark called out. "Tell me about Sarah." "Not now!" Thompson fired at an advancing operator, forcing him back. "Now or I let them take you." Thompson grimaced, pressing against his wound. It was a long-term agent, something Morrison developed off the books. Untraceable after 2 years, he used it on 3 other targets before Sarah, people who knew too much or asked the wrong questions. Who else knows? Nobody. Morrison kept that close. But there's an antidote, or was. He had to test it to make sure the poison worked. Mark processed this, filed it away. Then he made a choice that would have seemed impossible minutes ago. He moved to Thompson's position, laying down covering fire. "Why?" Thompson gasped. "Because the enemy of my enemy is useful until he's not." Mark handed him a fresh magazine. "Can you move?" "Yeah." "Then move." South exit, stay low. They fought their way through the warehouse, an unlikely alliance born of necessity. Mark's training took over, his body remembering patterns drilled into muscle memory through countless operations. The MP5 was an extension of his will, each burst precise, economical. One of the operators got too close. Mark took him down with the ceramic knife, a quick thrust between armor plates. The man dropped, gurgling through his throat mic. Mark took his radio, hearing the chatter. "Target 1 is mobile, Target 2 is with him. Confirm orders?" "Take them both," a voice replied. Not Morrison, someone else, younger, American accent with a slight Eastern European undertone. "The drive is priority. Everything else is cleanup." Mark and Thompson reached the south exit, but it was blocked. 2 more operators, weapons trained on the door. Mark pulled Thompson back just as bullets shredded the space they'd occupied. "Trapped," Thompson said, his face pale from blood loss. Mark was calculating options when he heard it. The distinctive sound of a Barrett .50 caliber rifle. One of the operators blocking their exit simply ceased to exist from the chest up, the massive round turning him into mist. The second dove for cover, but a follow-up shot punched through the wall and found him anyway. "Murphy," Mark breathed. His overwatch had brought the heavy hardware. They burst through the exit into blinding sunlight. Ava was there with a vehicle, engine running. "Get in!" Mark shoved Thompson into the back, then climbed in as Ava floored it. Behind them, the warehouse erupted in flames. Someone had decided to destroy all evidence. "The drive!" Thompson gasped. "They'll check the drive." "Let them," Mark said. "It'll take their best technicians hours to realize the data's corrupted. By then, we'll be gone." "We?" "You're going to tell me everything about Morrison. Then you're going to help me find him." Thompson laughed, bitter and pained. "You think I know where he is?" "He's Smoke Ghost, 10 identities, 20 safe houses. He could be anyone, anywhere. But you know how he thinks. His patterns, his resources." Mark turned to look at Thompson directly. "You help me find him, and I'll let you disappear. New identity, new life, just like Morrison promised but didn't deliver. And if I refuse,
Then I leave you at the nearest hospital with a note explaining who you really are. Let the agencies fight over who gets to interrogate you first." Thompson was quiet for a moment, weighing options. "There's a place," he said finally, "a safe house in Wyoming. Morrison uses it for sensitive meetings. If he's going to ground, that's where he'll be." Ava drove them to one of Murphy's safe houses, a cabin in the mountains that looked rustic but had reinforced walls and enough surveillance equipment to rival a government facility. Murphy was already there, along with 2 of his men. "Thompson," Murphy said, his voice flat. "Should I shoot him now or later?" "Later," Mark said. "Maybe. Depends on how useful he is." They got Thompson medical attention. Murphy had a medic on his team who asked no questions. While Thompson recovered, Mark called Mrs. Chen. "How's my butterfly?" "Painting dragons today," Mrs. Chen replied. "Very fierce dragons who protect princesses. She seems to be processing recent events through art." "Let her. I'll be back tomorrow." "Be careful, Mark. The shadows have eyes today." It was code. She'd noticed surveillance. Mark wasn't surprised. After the warehouse incident, everyone would be watching, trying to figure out what happened and who survived. That evening, while Thompson slept off the painkillers, Mark, Ava, and Murphy planned. The Wyoming safe house was fortified, isolated, and probably trapped 6 ways to Sunday. A direct assault would be suicide. "We need bait," Ava said. "Something Morrison wants badly enough to come out of hiding." "The real drive," Mark said. "And me. That's suicide." "No, it's calculated risk. He needs confirmation the drive is destroyed and I'm dead. He'll want to do it personally. It's too important to trust to anyone else." Murphy pulled up satellite images of the Wyoming property. "It's a fortress. Motion sensors, cameras, probably mines on the approach roads. Even if we get in, getting out will be harder." "Unless we make him come to us," Mark said. "Thompson makes contact, says he has me and the real drive. Wants to make a deal. Morrison won't trust him after the warehouse, but he'll be curious enough to investigate. And then? Then we end this." They spent the night refining the plan, but Mark's mind kept drifting to Lily. She was the reason for all of this. Not revenge, not justice, but the simple need to ensure she could grow up without looking over her shoulder. Thompson woke around midnight, groggy but coherent. Mark interrogated him for hours, pulling out every detail about Morrison's operations. The network was larger than expected, reaching into multiple agencies, several governments. Silent Wave had been just one operation in a larger game. "He's building something," Thompson said eventually. "I don't know what, but Silent Wave was supposed to fund it. The bioweapon angle, your daughter's immunity, it's all connected to something bigger." "What kind of something?" "The kind that reshapes global power structures." He talked about making traditional warfare obsolete, about conflicts won without firing a shot. Biological warfare on a scale never before imagined. Targeted plagues that could eliminate specific ethnic groups or geographical populations. The ultimate weapon for ethnic cleansing or territorial expansion. "Volkov was right," Ava said quietly. "This is about more than just cleaning up loose ends." Mark made a decision. He pulled out the card Volkov had given him, dialed the number. "I wondered when you'd call," Volkov answered. "Morrison is Kozlov. You were right about everything." "I usually am." "What do you need?" "Resources. Morrison has a safe house in Wyoming. We're going to draw him out, but we need support." "Done. I'll have assets in place within 12 hours. Anything else?" "Your daughter. She needs to know the truth." "No." Volkov's tone was final. "She's built a life free from this darkness. I won't destroy that. Morrison knows she exists. Once he's done with us, he'll come for her." There was a long pause. "Then Morrison needs to die before that happens." "Agreed." Mark hung up and found Thompson watching him. "You're really going to war with Morrison." "I've been at war with Morrison since he killed my wife. I just didn't know it." "He'll destroy you. He has resources you can't imagine." "He has resources," Mark agreed, "but I have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "Nothing left to lose except my daughter. And that makes me the most dangerous thing he's ever faced." The next morning, Mark drove back to town, needing to see Lily before everything went down. He found her at school, watched from a distance as she played at recess. She was laughing, chasing friends, being a normal kid. It was everything he'd fought for, everything Sarah had wanted for her. Mrs. Chen appeared beside him, silent as always. "She knows something's happening," she said. "Children always do." "Is she scared?" "No, she trusts you completely. That's both beautiful and terrifying." "If something happens to me, it won't." Mrs. Chen's tone brooked no argument. "You'll come back to her. Men like you always find a way back to what matters. Men like me get people killed. Men like you keep others alive. There's a difference between a warrior and a killer, Mark. You've never forgotten that difference, even when the world tried to make you." That afternoon, Thompson made the call. Mark listened as he played his part perfectly, the betrayed operative looking to make a deal. Morrison was suspicious but interested. They agreed to meet at a neutral location, an abandoned airfield 50 miles from the Wyoming safe house. "He'll bring an army," Thompson warned after hanging up. "Let him," Mark said. "We'll bring something better." "What's that?" "The truth." Mark spent his last evening with Lily, helping with homework, making dinner together, reading bedtime stories. She curled against him on the couch, warm and trusting, while he read about brave princesses and clever dragons. "Dad," she said as he tucked her in, "when I grow up, I want to be like you." "You want to be a contractor who fixes houses?" She shook her head. "I want to be someone who protects people, who stands between the good people and the bad things." Mark's throat tightened. "That's a hard job, Butterfly." "I know, but someone has to do it. And you taught me that sometimes doing the right thing is hard but necessary." He kissed her forehead, wondering when she'd become so wise. "Sleep now. Dream of butterflies." "Dad? You'll come back, right? From whatever you have to do tomorrow?" He wanted to lie, to give her the comfort of certainty, but she deserved better than comfortable lies. "I'll do everything in my power to come back to you." She nodded, accepting this truth the way children accept hard realities when presented honestly. "Okay, but if you can't, I'll be okay. Mom taught me to be strong, and you taught me to be smart. I'll be okay." Mark held her until she fell asleep, then stood in her doorway for a long time, memorizing everything, the way her hair spread across the pillow, the slight smile on her sleeping face, the butterfly nightlight casting gentle shadows. This was what he was fighting for. Not revenge, not justice, but this moment of peace, multiplied by thousands of nights to come. The chance for Lily to grow up, fall in love, have children of her own, all without the shadow of his past darkening her future. He left before dawn, while she still slept. Mrs. Chen would take her to school, maintain normalcy. If everything went right, he'd be home for dinner. If everything went wrong, Mrs. Chen had instructions, resources, and the will to keep Lily safe. The team assembled at the airfield as the sun rose. Murphy's men had secured the perimeter. Ava had positioned herself with Overwatch. Volkov's assets were invisible but present, insurance against betrayal. Thompson sat in the center of it all, the drive visible in his hand, playing his role as bait. Mark was hidden, watching through a scope as vehicles approached. 3 SUVs, 2 escort trucks, enough firepower to level a city block. Morrison stepped out of the middle SUV, and Mark got his first look at the man who'd destroyed his life. He looked ordinary, medium height, medium build, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting. The perfect spy's appearance, but his movements were wrong. Too smooth, too practiced. This wasn't Morrison. It was another double, another layer of deception. "Shit," Murphy whispered over comms. "It's not him." Mark had seconds to decide. Abort and lose the chance, or adapt and find another way. He thought of Sarah, poisoned slowly while he watched helplessly. He thought of Lily, sleeping peacefully, trusting him to come home. "Execute," he said. The plan shifted. Instead of killing Morrison, they'd take his double alive, make him talk, follow the chain up until they found the real puppet master. Thompson stood as the fake Morrison approached, tension crackling between them. Words were exchanged, too quiet for the mics to pick up. The double examined the drive, pulled out a device to verify it. That's when Mark saw her. a figure on the ridge opposite his position, barely visible, setting up what looked like a sniper rifle. Not part of their team, not part of Morrison's. A third player. He adjusted his scope, caught a glimpse of the face. One blue eye, one green, visible for just a moment before she settled behind her rifle. Natasha Volkov. Natalie Voss. The girl from Silent Wave, all grown up and here to claim her own revenge. Everything was about to go sideways in ways no one had planned for. The ghost from Silent Wave wasn't the only one rising today. The past had come calling, and it brought friends. Mark made another choice, perhaps the most important of his life. Instead of calling out the new threat, he waited. Sometimes the best strategy was to let chaos reign and find opportunity in the storm. The first shot would start a war. The question was who would fire it, and whether anyone would survive the crossfire that followed. In his mind, Mark heard Lily's voice. Butterflies look fragile, but they survive storms. Time to weather the storm, time to see who was truly fragile, and who would emerge transformed. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the airfield. Somewhere in those shadows, death waited patiently. It had waited 7 years since Silent Wave. It could wait a few seconds more. The shot never came. Instead, Natasha Volkov lowered her rifle and spoke into a radio Mark hadn't known she had. Her voice carried across the airfield through hidden speakers, clear and accented with carefully cultivated neutrality. Hello, Morrison, or should I say, whoever is pretending to be Morrison today. The double froze, his hand halfway to his weapon. Thompson stepped back, confusion evident on his face. This wasn't part of anyone's plan. You don't remember me, Natasha continued, but I remember you. 7 years ago, you had me in a cage, running tests, extracting blood, treating me like a laboratory rat. You told me my genetics would change the world. You were right, just not in the way you imagined. Mark watched through his scope as Morrison's men formed a defensive perimeter, weapons raised but uncertain where to aim. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I have something you want, Natasha said. The complete files from Silent Wave. Not just the financial records, but the medical data, the test results, everything about the bioweapon program you thought died with that operation. The double pulled out a phone, presumably calling the real Morrison for instructions. Mark could see his lips moving rapidly, panic creeping into his controlled facade. You have 30 seconds to decide, Natasha announced. Meet me alone at the coordinates I'm sending to Thompson's phone, or I release everything to the media. Every major news outlet, every intelligence agency, every government that would be interested in knowing about America's illegal bioweapons program. Thompson's phone buzzed. He looked at it, then at the double. She's not bluffing. These are GPS coordinates about 3 miles north. The double listened to his phone for another moment, then nodded. We accept. But if this is a trap, everything's a trap, Natasha interrupted. The question is whether you're smart enough to navigate it. The speakers went silent. Mark watched as the convoy reorganized, most of the vehicles staying at the airfield while the double and 2 guards headed north. This was his chance. All teams, hold position, Mark commanded through comms. Let this play out. Ghost, what the hell is happening? Murphy demanded. The past is having a conversation with itself. We watch, we wait, and we adapt. Mark moved through the terrain like his call sign suggested, a ghost flickering between cover, paralleling the convoy's route. Ava did the same from her position, both of them converging on the coordinates Natasha had provided. The location was an old ranger station, abandoned for decades but strategically positioned with clear sightlines in all directions. Natasha stood in front of it, no longer hiding, wearing civilian clothes that somehow made her look more dangerous than tactical gear would have. The heterochromatic eyes that had identified her as a child now gave her an otherworldly appearance, as if she existed in 2 realities simultaneously. The double approached cautiously, his guards flanking him. Miss Volkov, I presume? Dr. Voss, she corrected. Natasha Volkov died in Silent Wave. I'm what rose from her ashes. Poetic. Now, about these files. First, we discuss terms. Natasha pulled out a tablet, its screen showing what appeared to be medical data. Do you know what you actually created with your experiments on me? The double maintained his poker face.
We were investigating genetic immunity to certain biological agents. You were trying to weaponize my immunity to create targeted bioweapons that would only affect specific populations. But you failed to understand the full implications of my genetics. She turned the tablet toward him. My blood doesn't just provide immunity. It can be synthesized into a universal antidote for your entire bioweapon arsenal. Mark heard Murphy's sharp intake of breath through comms. If true, this changed everything. The power to create unstoppable bioweapons meant nothing if your enemy had the antidote. That's impossible, the double said, but uncertainty colored his voice. Your scientists thought so too, until I proved them wrong.
I've spent 7 years perfecting what you started, turning your weapon into a shield. Natasha smiled, cold and sharp. I've already distributed the formula to certain parties. Insurance, you understand. What do you want? I want Morrison, the real one. I want the man who ordered my kidnapping, who killed my mother when she tried to protect me, who turned me into an experiment. The double was sweating now, despite the cool morning air. I don't know where... The shot came from nowhere, taking him in the chest. Not from Natasha, not from Mark's team, but from further out. The double crumpled, his guard spinning frantically, searching for the shooter. Predictable, a new voice said, and Mark's blood chilled as he recognized it. The real Morrison emerged from the ranger station behind Natasha, weapon trained on her head. You always were too emotional, too focused on revenge to see the bigger picture. Natasha didn't flinch. Hello, Dmitri, or do you prefer Morrison today? I prefer to be addressed as the person holding a gun to your head. Mark had a clear shot, but held his fire. Something about Natasha's posture, her complete lack of fear, made him wait. You think you're the only one who's been planning for 7 years? Natasha asked. Check your phone. Morrison frowned but pulled out his device one-handed. Whatever he saw on the screen made his face pale. That's a live feed from your Wyoming safe house, Natasha explained conversationally. Notice anything missing? Like the $5 million in cash you had hidden in the basement, or the servers containing your operational data, or the 3 body doubles you had stationed there. Impossible. That place was, past tense. Your security is only as good as the people you trust, and you've betrayed so many people, Dmitri. Some of them have been waiting years for payback. Mark understood now. This entire meeting was a distraction, keeping Morrison's attention here while Volkov's teams cleaned out his resources. The daughter had inherited her father's strategic mind. Morrison pressed the gun harder against Natasha's head. You've made a fatal mistake. Have I? She turned slowly, facing him directly, the gun now against her forehead. Go ahead. Shoot. But know that the moment I die, every intelligence agency in the world gets proof of your real identity, your operations, and most importantly, your connection to the bioweapon program that violates every international treaty America has signed. You're bluffing. I learned from my father. He never bluffs, and neither do I. The standoff stretched taut, 2 wills testing each other. Mark adjusted his position, finger on the trigger, ready to take the shot if Morrison's finger so much as twitched. Then Thompson moved. The wounded traitor had been forgotten in the drama, assumed to be neutralized. But he'd crawled to one of the dead guard's weapons, and now he raised it, not at Morrison or Natasha, but at the tree line where he'd correctly guessed Mark was positioned. Ghost, he shouted. I know you're there. Morrison, the real prize isn't her, it's him. Mark Dalton has the original drive, the one with evidence about Sarah's poisoning. Everything happened at once. Morrison swung his weapon toward Mark's position. Natasha moved with inhuman speed, a concealed blade appearing in her hand and slashing across Morrison's wrist. Ava's rifle cracked from her position, taking Thompson in the shoulder and spinning him to the ground. Mark broke cover, moving toward the chaos, but Morrison was already adapting. Even wounded, he was dangerous, pulling a second weapon with his offhand. The shot was wild, but close enough to force Mark to dive behind a rusted truck. Everyone stop! Murphy's voice boomed across the clearing, and Mark realized his backup had arrived. A dozen men emerged from concealment, weapons trained on everyone. Nobody moves, nobody dies. Simple equation. Morrison laughed, bitter and sharp. You think this ends here? You have no idea what you're dealing with. The network I've built, the people I answer to, killing me just promotes my replacement." "Then we'll kill them too," Mark said, stepping out from cover, his weapon steady on Morrison. "However many it takes, however long it takes. You poisoned my wife. You threatened my daughter. This ends now." "Your wife was collateral damage," Morrison said dismissively. "A necessary sacrifice for—" The rage Mark had been controlling for days finally broke free. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, his fist connecting with Morrison's jaw before anyone could react. Morrison went down hard, and Mark followed, pinning him, his hands finding the man's throat. "Mark, no!" Ava shouted, but Mark was beyond hearing. This was the man who'd made him watch Sarah waste away, who'd stolen Lily's mother, who'd turned their life into a battlefield. It was Natasha who stopped him, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "He's not worth it. Your daughter needs a father, not a killer." The words penetrated the rage, and Mark saw Lily's face in his mind. Not disappointed, but sad, the way she'd looked when he'd had to explain that Mommy wasn't coming home from the hospital. He released Morrison, who gasped and coughed, throat already bruising. Mark stood, brushing dirt from his clothes, the rage settling back into cold purpose. "You're right," he told Natasha. "He's not worth it. But he's going to pay anyway." Mark pulled out the real drive, the one he'd hidden for 7 years. "Everything's on here. Silent Wave, the bioweapons program, the assassination protocols, including the poison you used on Sarah and the others." Morrison's eyes fixed on the drive with desperate hunger. "That should have been destroyed." "Should have, but wasn't. Just like we should have died, but didn't." Mark turned to Murphy. "Can your people get him to a secure location?" "I want him kept alive, but uncomfortable." "With pleasure." As Murphy's men secured Morrison, Natasha approached Mark. "The antidote," she said quietly. "My blood can synthesize it. If your wife was exposed to the agent, I think she was. And if it's been less than 5 years—" "She's been dead for 3 years," Mark said, the words heavy as stones. "I'm sorry. But there might be others, people who were exposed but haven't shown symptoms yet. We could save them." Mark thought about the families of other operatives, innocent people who might be walking around with death ticking in their cells. "We'll need a list of everyone Morrison targeted. He'll never give it up willingly. Then we'll be creative about asking." Thompson groaned from where he lay, Ava's shot having disabled but not killed him. Mark walked over, looking down at the man who'd been his brother in arms before becoming his enemy. "You get one chance," Mark said. "Tell me everything about Morrison's network, and you disappear. Hold back anything, and you join him in whatever hole Murphy finds to drop him in." "I need medical attention," Thompson gasped. "You need to start talking. Medical attention comes after useful information." For the next hour, Thompson talked. Names, dates, operations, safe houses, bank accounts. A network spanning 3 continents and involving players at the highest levels of government and private military contractors. Morrison hadn't been working alone. He'd been the American arm of something larger, something international. "They called it the Prometheus Project," Thompson wheezed. "Stealing fire from the gods, except the fire was biological warfare capability. Every major power wanted it, but nobody wanted to be caught developing it. So they outsourced to people like Morrison," Ava said, understanding dawning on her face. "Black budget operations using special forces teams as unwitting test subjects. Silent Wave was supposed to test the latest iteration, but you all survived longer than expected." "Because of her," Mark said, nodding toward Natasha. "Her genetics provided partial immunity even through proximity." Natasha's expression was unreadable. "I was the control group, the constant variable in their experiment." "You were a child," Mark said firmly. "Whatever they used you for, it wasn't your choice or your fault." She met his eyes, and for a moment the composed doctor's mask slipped, revealing the frightened 12-year-old she'd been. Then it was back, locked away with all the other traumas that shape survivors. Murphy's team loaded Morrison and Thompson into separate vehicles. Before they drove away, Morrison managed one last threat. "You have no idea what you've started, Ghost. The people I work for don't forgive, don't forget. They'll come for you, for your daughter, for everyone you've ever cared about." "Let them come," Mark said. "I'll be waiting." As the convoy disappeared, Volkov emerged from the tree line. Mark hadn't known he was there, but wasn't surprised. The old spy moved like his daughter, present and absent simultaneously. "You did well," Volkov told Mark. "Both of you," he added, looking at his daughter for the first time in 7 years. "Hello, Papa," Natasha said softly in Russian. "You were supposed to stay hidden, stay safe," Volkov replied in the same language. "Safety is an illusion. You taught me that." They embraced briefly, awkwardly, two people who loved each other but had been shaped by loss into weapons rather than family. "What happens now?" Ava asked, ever practical. "Now we dismantle Morrison's network," Mark said. "Every asset, every operation, every connection, we pull it all down. That could take years," Murphy pointed out. "Then it takes years. But my daughter grows up in a world where these people don't exist." "And the Prometheus project?" Natasha asked. "Morrison was just one tentacle of something much larger." Mark looked at the assembled group, soldiers, spies, survivors all. Each scarred, each carrying ghosts, but each still standing. "Then we cut off every tentacle until we find the head," he said. "And then we kill it." "That's declaring war on some of the most powerful people in the world," Volkov warned. "They declared war first when they killed Sarah, when they turned children into experiments, when they treated human lives as acceptable losses." Mark's voice carried the weight of command he'd thought left behind. "I tried to be just Mark, just a dad, but they wouldn't let me. So now they get Ghost, and everyone who stands with him." "I'm in," Ava said immediately. "My resources are yours," Volkov added. "I believe I owe you about $3 million worth of assistance," Murphy said with a grin. "Morrison's safe house was very profitable." Natasha was quiet for a moment, then, "I've spent 7 years preparing for this. I have resources, connections, and most importantly, the antidote to their weapons. If we're going to war, we go properly equipped." Mark nodded, feeling something shift inside him. For 3 years, he'd tried to run from what he was, to bury Ghost and be just Mark. But that was like asking a sword to be a plowshare. Possible, but denying its essential nature. "There's something else," Natasha said, pulling out a sealed envelope. "This was in Morrison's safe house, addressed to you." Mark recognized Sarah's handwriting immediately. His hands shook as he opened it, finding a letter dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest Mark, if you're reading this, then you've learned the truth about my illness. Please don't blame yourself. We both knew your past might catch up eventually. I made peace with it the day I fell in love with you. I know you'll want revenge. That's who you are. A protector, a warrior, someone who stands between evil and innocent. But remember that Lily needs a father more than she needs an avenger. Find the balance, my love. Be the ghost when necessary, but always come home to be dad. Teach our daughter to be strong but gentle, fierce but kind. Teach her that butterflies might look fragile, but they change the world just by existing. All my love, always. Sarah P.S. I hid something for you in Lily's baby album. Page 12. You'll know when you need it." Mark folded the letter carefully, placing it in his chest pocket, over his heart. Sarah had known. Somehow, she'd known this day would come. "We should go," Murphy said gently. "This location's been compromised. Too many shots fired, too many witnesses." They dispersed, each to their own vehicle, their own preparation. But Mark sat for a moment in his truck, looking at the abandoned ranger station where so much had changed in so little time. His phone rang. Mrs. Chen. "Lily's asking for you," she said. "She says she finished a new painting and needs to show you immediately. Tell her I'm on my way." Mark? Is it finished? He thought about Morrison in custody, Thompson bleeding out his secrets, the network still vast and dangerous, but no longer hidden. "It's just beginning," he said, "but the immediate threat is handled." "Good. Lily needs her father tonight, not the ghost." Mark drove home, watching the mirrors from habit, but finding only normal traffic. At Mrs. Chen's building, he found Lily in the studio, covered in paint and grinning. "Dad!" "Look!" She held up her latest creation, a figure standing between light and shadow, 1 foot in each world. But instead of being torn apart, the figure was whole, balanced, and behind it, barely visible, were wings. "It's you," she said proudly. "Mrs. Chen taught me about duality in art, How sometimes things can be two things at once, and that's okay. Mark hugged her tight, paint and all. It's perfect, Butterfly. Are the bad men gone? The ones who were close are gone. But there might be others further away. Lily pulled back, looking at him with those wise green eyes. But you'll stop them too, right? Like you stopped these ones? Yes. Good. Can we have pizza for dinner? The shift from existential threats to dinner plans was so perfectly Lily that Mark laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. Pizza sounds perfect. They went home together, Lily chattering about her day, her friends, her art. Normal things, precious things. Mark listened while part of his mind planned, strategized, prepared for the war to come. That night, after Lily was asleep, he retrieved Sarah's baby album. Page 12 showed Lily at 3 months old, grinning toothlessly at the camera. But behind the photo was another envelope, this one containing a small key and an address. Mark recognized it, a storage unit Sarah had rented years ago for her art supplies. He'd kept paying for it after her death, unable to let go of that piece of her. He'd go tomorrow, see what final gift Sarah had left him. But tonight, he stood guard over his daughter's sleep, a ghost watching over an angel, ready for whatever dawn might bring. The war Morrison had warned about was coming. The Prometheus Project, the international conspiracy, the bioweapons program, it all needed to be destroyed. But Mark had something now he hadn't had before. Allies, resources, and most importantly, purpose. He pulled out his phone, created a group text with Ava, Murphy, and Volkov. Tomorrow, we start planning. The real war begins now. The responses came quickly, each confirming their commitment. Even Natasha, somehow added to the group, replied with a simple, "Ready." Mark put the phone away and checked on Lily one more time. She slept peacefully, surrounded by her butterfly drawings, safe in her cocoon of innocence. But caterpillars eventually became butterflies, and butterflies, despite their delicate appearance, were some of nature's most resilient creatures. "Your mom was right," he whispered to his sleeping daughter. "Butterflies change the world just by existing, and you, my little butterfly, have already changed mine." Tomorrow would bring challenges. Morrison's network would retaliate. The Prometheus Project would protect itself. The powerful people who'd invested in bioweapons wouldn't simply accept defeat. But tonight, in this moment, a father stood watch over his daughter, and that was enough. The ghost could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, he was just Mark, just Dad, just a man who'd found something worth fighting for, and people worth fighting alongside. The butterfly painting seemed to flutter in the nightlight's glow, a reminder that transformation was possible, that beautiful things could emerge from darkness, that sometimes the most fragile-looking creatures were the strongest of all. The war was coming, but for tonight, there was peace. And in that peace, Mark found the strength he'd need for all the battles ahead.